What is up, everybody, and welcome to CTW Live. I am your host, Seamus Zarlingo. Alongside of me tonight, Griffin Aldrich. And Griffin, we have a big night yet again in the NBA. We just covered the draft a couple nights ago. A big transactional night. Now two big transactional nights for the NBA in the NBA draft. However, another transactional night comes upon the horizon for us. NBA free agency here in 2025. The start of NBA free agency starts right now, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, and NBA free agency officially underway here on June 30th, 2025. And of course, July 1st, the old date of NBA free agency, now June 30th. So NBA free agency, Griff, it's officially begun. The madness has officially begun, and we have a few deals trickling out to us already. One of the most notable deals, or more notable deals, to start out with, Jaren Jackson Jr. returning to the Memphis Grizzlies, signs an extension with the Memphis Grizzlies for $240 million. So Jaren Jackson Jr. inks a max deal with the Memphis Grizzlies, a 5-year, $240 million deal Jaren Jackson gets from the Memphis Grizzlies. It was let's face it, Jaren Jackson Jr. It was questioned whether or not he'd actually get that money. He does in the end from the Grizzlies. I also want to add on the Grizzlies. They ink Santi Aldama, another free agent, 3 years, $52 million. Santi Aldama returns to the Memphis Grizzlies. So the Grizzlies, grabbing the early headlines here in free agency. But Griffin, what are your thoughts on all this madness coming to us right now before we get into even more notifications here coming our way?
Well, to add on to that, with the Grizzlies too, Cam Spencer has agreed to a 2-year, $4.5 million full guaranteed contract with the Grizzlies as well. So they're making some noise early. And just with the Jaren Jackson Jr. news, a lot of I know from, because again, my boss is a Knicks fan. I know from his perspective, he was hoping to get Triple J, in New York, but that kind of shuts that down now, signing that extension with Memphis. However, with Drew Holiday, he was shipped off to Portland, so that doesn't completely turn down the possibility, but it looks a little more promising that Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to stay a Grizzly. But definitely exciting. It's not like MLB when free agency starts. This could be going all winter long. This is exciting because you're going to have breaking news right off the get-go. Players want to sign. It's not anything like other leagues where it's like, oh, it's just a waiting game and you see the free agents out there and it's like, oh, when are they going to sign? With that NBA, MLB, it's what it is. But, it's exciting. They sign fast, and as Celtics fans, this is we'll get into it in a second too, but as Celtics fans, this is going to be bittersweet. But, as an NBA analyst, it's a fun day for sure, though, Seamus.
And let's get to another notification in which just came across the headlines here. Dorian Finney-Smith leaving Los Angeles, leaving the Lakers, en route to Houston with the Rockets. Of course, just newly acquired Kevin Durant just re-signed Fred VanVleet to a 2-year, $50 million deal, $25 million per year for Fred VanVleet. But the Houston Rockets make yet another acquisition here in this offseason, Dorian Finney-Smith. They rob him from the Lakers on a 4-year, $53 million deal. So Dorian Finney-Smith heading to Houston from Los Angeles. Griffin, we're gonna have I have a feeling we're gonna see quite a few notifications come across the headlines here as we get into this live. Another one, Paul Reed, a 2-year, $11 million deal, and he returns to the Detroit Pistons. So some early free agency news just from the get-go. We have a lot of headlines though to get to tonight. Can you still hear me, Griffin? All right.
I can still hear you.
All right. Nice. You can still hear me. Good. But we do have more headlines to get to tonight, particularly when it comes to the Boston Celtics, because the Boston Celtics have a couple of free agents on their own. Now, first, let's get to this, actually. Let's start out with this one. Let's start out with a positive, okay? We're going to talk about Al Horford. We're going to talk about Luke Kornet. But I want to bring up somebody that hits home a little bit to you, Griffin, right? JD Davidson. All right. Per
Yeah.
Adam Himmelsbach, according to a league source, the Celtics are picking up JD Davidson's option for next season, but it will be non-guaranteed, preserving some flexibility for both sides. So a non-guaranteed deal for JD Davidson going into next season. However, the Celtics are picking up his team option. The Celtics brought JD Davidson on to a standard deal at the end of the 24-25 season, converted him from a two-way contract, gave him a 2-year deal with the team option in the second year. The Celtics pick up that team option, and now JD Davidson back on the roster for the time being. I assume he may be playing Summer League as well for the Celtics. This would be his 4th year in Summer League. So it's going to be a pretty big Summer League for JD Davidson if we want to get the headlines rolling for what will be happening with the Celtics Summer League team. JD Davidson, a big Summer League with it being it's his 4th Summer League. Definitely a big one for JD Davidson. And if he's going to make the roster next year, you would have to assume he has to have a big Summer League and training camp, which is why this deal at the end of the night is unguaranteed. However, hearing that news, Griffin, what are your thoughts on the Celtics retaining JD Davidson into the future?
Well, I like it. I looked at it last year and I was like, well, we have such a deep team that if JD Davison wants, a future in the NBA, he's going to have to go somewhere a little weaker like Charlotte or something like that. I looked at, but we obviously see how the salary, affected the Boston Celtics, and it really destroyed us this year. So we're a little shallower, I want to say, and JD Davison could really get a opportunity on this team this year. And I look at JD Davison. Obviously, you said I'm big on JD Davison just because he's one of the main Celtics guys. I saw him play a lot in Maine, and he's a guy who, just from my perspective, he's a guy that's going to bring up the ball a lot, and he's going to have a lot of time with the ball. He is not a pass first point guard. He's a point guard that's going to come down and shoot the ball. And if he gets the ball, he's going to shoot it. He's a guy who really likes to huck up shots, but I feel like the Celtics could really break that habit, as he's going to have that habit broken, because you look at JD Davison, if he wants a real opportunity with the Boston Celtics, then he's going to have to break that habit and become more so, I wouldn't say a pass first point guard, but be more of a play developing point guard rather than a shoot first point guard, going up the court, shooting the ball, very, very selfish with the ball. I do have to say JD Davison, but I like this because, he's young, he's very talented. And this is one player that, I feel like different circumstances, but kind of has a similar future, like, not future past, as Peyton Pritchard did. Obviously completely different players, but Pritchard was young, JD Davison is young, and this is the opportunity he's going to be presented this year. Getting that option and coming back with the Boston Celtics gives him the opportunity to come off the bench and do some work in Boston. So I really like this move from the Celtics. I know I haven't really talked about it much or said much about it because it's one that it's expected, every year it's like, oh, is JD Davison going to be back? He'll probably be in the G League, but this year he's actually, and Seamus, you already mentioned, he really needs to prove himself in Summer League, being his 4th Summer League. He really needs to shoot off from there. But I'm looking at it from the Celtics season too. I feel like this is the year that he's going to get a lot of opportunities and he needs to execute. If he doesn't execute this year, this could be the final year you see him in a Celtics jersey. So I am excited to see what's coming for JD Davison, and I like this deal. And you, again, Seamus, I'm a big JD Davison guy, so I really do like this move for the Celtics. And I think this is one that you're going to look back at and be like, all right, in a bridge year, this helped develop this player. And I'm hoping the Celtics could kind of morph him into a good bench piece, because you look at him with the main Celtics, obviously, again, he's a guy who's very selfish with the basketball, but this is a year where development is going to be key, and development isn't going to be in the G League for the Celtics this year. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of it, with Max Shulga, Mari Williams, and honestly, I can't think of his name right now, Hugo Gonzalez. But with JD Davison and the Boston Celtics, there's going to be a lot of development opportunities. Obviously, we still have a good team and still can compete, but there's going to be a lot of learning opportunities for the Boston Celtics this year, being a bridge year with no Jason Tatum. And you look at the roster as of right now, and it's not the strongest, to say the least. But Seamus, what about you? What are your thoughts on JD Davidson and this team option?
Well, of course, it's going to be hard to crack a guard rotation when it includes Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Anthony Simons, those three guards in particular. But JD Davison, he's lingering. He's lingering in there, no doubt, for the Celtics. But this is ultimately the Celtics' fourth year of the JD Davison experience, right? The fourth year of the JD Davison project, right? Because if we go back in Celtics history, they picked him after the 2022 NBA Finals. That draft, right? 2022 in that NBA draft. And he's basically exhausted his two-way contracts in the NBA. And now he's on a standard deal with the Celtics. And to me, he's a player that hasn't proven much at the pro level whatsoever. I mean, just think about some of the minutes we saw from him this past season, particularly down in Orlando. Didn't see the best minutes in those experiences, but however, you mentioned the main Celtics. That's where he's really made his bread and butter so far, is up there in Portland, Maine. And you've witnessed it firsthand, JD Davison's progression and development up there, becoming the G League MVP.
Yeah.
However, being the G League MVP, I will say, doesn't necessarily guarantee you success in the NBA. If you go back and look at all the G League MVPs, not too many of them are finding long-term success in the
Well,
NBA. It's very rare from the G League to see some of those guys find the long-term success, and particularly with the MVPs, right? Because of the high usage in the G League. That's what I see for JD Davison, is he is a high usage player, and he needs the ball in his hands to succeed. And I kind of agree. He's in that. I wouldn't say the path is exactly the same as Pritchard, because Pritchard was the 26th
no.
overall pick. He was thrown into the fire fairly early. Received a lot of minutes that 2021 season, his rookie year, when the Celtics were 36 and 36. They just weren't very good that year. It was a COVID year. It was one of the league's COVID years. And the roster was just all over the place that year. Pritchard definitely received more opportunity, and his opportunities fluctuated over time. Davison, he's coming into his fourth season inside the Celtics organization. He hasn't really done much for the actual Boston Celtics on court. Again, a lot of his work has come with the main Celtics. And from my
Well,
standpoint on that,
break,
from my standpoint on that,
breaking news.
we'll wait. Go ahead, Griffin.
Well, no, Seamus, you could say it if you'd like to.
Well,
You
no, I was going to end this point on JD Davison. Uh, he's in his fourth year with the Celtics, hasn't really produced with the Celtics on court, and being the G League MVP up in Maine, uh, I believe from that standpoint, he's going to have to prove himself in summer league and training camp, and actually with the team. This is a non-guaranteed deal, so it's possible JD Davison is cut after summer league, or even cut during training camp. That's still a very realistic possibility, because he's in that Gershon Yabusele range right now. Gershon Yabusele, I know he's highly praised. The Dancing Bear is highly praised now after the season he just had with the Sixers and his comeback into the NBA from Real Madrid. But before that, Gershon Yabusele entering the 2019 Summer League, he was picked in 2016, and that year it was okay. We got to see some development out of Yabu in the summer league, particularly. And he just had a terrible summer league. I mean, he wasn't impactful whatsoever, and the Celtics cut him right after that. So JD Davison, I got to say, he's definitely right now. He is. If you think about all the guards, he's probably he is the fourth guard. We've
Yep.
counted Shireman as a guard. I understand Jaylen Brown, all of that good jazz. But JD Davison, he's going to have to fight and claw his way into the rotation, because nothing is guaranteed, especially with the summer, as we know right now on June 30th. Not over yet for the Celtics.
Yeah, no.
And let's face this too. Could he be the Celtics retain his salary? They could also use it for trade bait elsewhere.
Totally.
So, just saying. Just
and
saying.
well, let's break this news really quick,
Yes.
and then I'll give you more info too, like on more thoughts on JD Davison. But Seamus, do you want to break this or want me to real quick?
Well, is it? Let's see. Um, which
Yeah, Jake.
which
Yeah, Jake.
Okay, well, okay. You want to okay that one? All right. Free
Yeah,
agent per Sham Sharania.
yeah.
Free agent for Jake Larabia has agreed to a 2-year, $12 million deal with the Los Angeles Lakers. Whoa. Okay.
I
So
know.
the Lakers receive Jake LaRavia on a 2-year, $12 million deal, so $6 million per year. And I'm noticing the market right now because Zaire Williams, he signs 2 years, $12 million with the Nets. Dayron Sharp, 2 years, $12 million with the Nets as well. Noticing that market for the unproven young guys. It's the young guys where they're unproven, but there's something there, right? Jake LaRavia,
Totally,
Dayron
totally.
Sharp, Zaire
There,
Williams. There's something there, but they're
there's
still
something there
they're
in the
young. They've
development.
been proving
Yeah,
themselves, but there's something there. These guys are getting about $6 million. And then Peyton Pritchard, let's face it, he was in that category
well,
when
he
he received
was.
his
And
deal,
look
right?
what
Because I
he's
mean, you look at
doing.
the number he's
Yeah,
making right now, about $7.7 million. Peyton Pritchard was in that category of young, unproven rotation player, but there's something here with Pritchard that could turn out into something good in the future. Obviously, the Celtics won that bet in the long run, but that was back in the summer of what 2023, right? 2023. I mean,
yeah.
the extension was either 23 or 24. Mix up the years nowadays. But so Jake LaRavia to the Los Angeles Lakers. That's I personally Jake LaRavia to me. I think there's something with Jake LaRavia. He's big. He can
Totally.
defend. He is pretty agile for his size. I mean, the size of Jake, like the Lakers lose Dorian Finney-Smith. Now, Jake LaRavia is not as good as Dorian Finney-Smith, but
He could be.
he's a more sizable player. I mean, he plays somewhat of the same position. You're getting him for cheaper. He's a younger talent, which could turn into something a little bit more than he's been in the next 2 years, right? And to me, the Grizzlies, I'm gonna just throw this out there. The Grizzlies, I don't know what they were doing, and I've been on the Grizzlies front office now for a couple of years saying, the Grizzlies front office, I understand people, prop them up as one of the better front offices in the league for drafting over the last couple of years and really the last decade. You think about some of their picks and which they brought into Memphis that turned out into something way more than what the actual pick value they initially received for that pick was. Guys like Dylan Brooks, players like that where they're finding value in the second round, like Jalen Wells last year. But the Grizzlies, they've given away players. They're part of the club of giving away players for absolutely nobody and making dumbfounding moves within the margins that people don't necessarily recognize in the moment, but in time severely hampered their roster to the point where they went from the 2 seed in 21-22 to the 8 seed in 24-25. And the Memphis Grizzlies, an example of that is not picking up, rather, not picking up Jake LaRavia's 4th-year rookie option, team option. Okay, that's why Jake LaRavia is a free agent right now. That's why the Grizzlies traded Jake LaRavia to the Kings, right? In the Marcus Smart, the whole Marvin Beck, that whole trade deadline fiasco. The Grizzlies trade Jake LaRavia to the Kings. Jake LaRavia is a free agency, or within free agency right now. He's a free agent right now. Signs with the Los Angeles Lakers. The Grizzlies could have had him for cheap next season. Just one more year. Could have had him for cheap, another year of service, and even signed him beyond that. But the Grizzlies didn't pick up his 4th-year team option, or the team option on the last year of his deal. It could have been 4th or 5th year, but I'm fairly certain it was his 4th. And well, he became a rotation player for them. They had to trade him for essentially nothing because they weren't going to sign him or re-sign him this summer. And looking at his number, it's not crazy. It's $6 million a year the next 2 years. The Grizzlies, the Grizzlies, they do a good job of shooting themselves in the foot. They're within the margins too. Like the Bane trade, I will say, made up for a lot of that. That was a great value deal for the Grizzlies. But everything else in between, you go down the list. I mean, we've been over it a million times. They've lost and given away quite a few players for value that's very
Totally.
questionable for themselves in the long run. So the Grizzlies, right this offseason so far, they are a talking point. And even within that Jake Larabia deal, you can bring up the Memphis Grizzlies. However, Jake Larabia on his way to the Los Angeles Lakers. I believe there is some news here as well with Cole Anthony. So let's see. Per Sham Sharania, more Grizzlies news here. Hey, we're just starting on the Memphis Grizzlies. I mean, how about that? We're just
Yeah,
starting on the Memphis Grizzlies. Per Sham Sharania, the Memphis Grizzlies and Cole Anthony's reps at Excel Sports are working toward a resolution that allows Memphis to create the necessary cap space to renegotiate and extend Jaren Jackson Jr. while giving Cole Anthony the opportunity to find his next destination. So basically, how that reads, they're working toward a resolution that allows Memphis to create the necessary cap space to renegotiate and extend Jaren Jackson. So they're trying to trade Cole Anthony. If I'm reading between the lines right there, either
yeah,
that or they're trying to buy him out, which we've seen. We're going to get into that news story a little bit later, but we've seen a notable buyout this offseason already with a younger player who teams may be potentially interested in. However, Cole Anthony with the Grizzlies right now. So let's go look at Cole Anthony's contract. So Cole Anthony, when they're talking about negotiating with Cole Anthony and finding a resolution in the long run. So Cole Anthony in 26-27 has a $13.1 million club option, well, team option, however you want to state that. 25-26 next year, he's owed $13.1 million. So basically, over the next two seasons, he's owed $26.2 million. And the back half of that is a team option. So whatever team Cole Anthony winds up on, whether he's traded, well, if he is traded, or if he stays on the Memphis Grizzlies, they'll have the option to pick that up or not. I'm going to go ahead and say they probably, whichever team he's on, probably won't pick up that 13 million for Cole Anthony. I don't believe he's a $13 million player. If anything, they'll probably let that one go and sign him to a longer term deal worth less money, right? Probably below $10 million Cole Anthony is worth. But at this moment, the Grizzlies, they're either buying out Cole Anthony, his final 2 years of his deal, or they're going to trade him elsewhere. So the Grizzlies, they're really in headlines here early on in
they are.
this free agency cycle. But what are
No,
your thoughts on that, Griffin?
no, totally. A lot of news from the Grizzlies, and again, I'm gonna go back to them extend like signing Cam Spencer to that 2-year deal. I feel like that's a player. You talked about Jake Laravia and Zaire Williams and those players who have some talent and but have something to prove still before becoming that player that we all think they will be. But I feel like Cam Spencer is one of those players as well. Cam Spencer, obviously some young talent that has a lot to prove still and could be a good option on the Grizzlies though. And you look at this team, with the Grizzlies, and you look at the whole Cole Anthony deal and all of that. And I look at that and it's like, Cole Anthony was probably just a throw on to match some salary and everything. So I'm not sure. He might be one of those players too, Seamus. Now think about it. If they do buy out Cole Anthony, do you think he could potentially be one of those players that, his NBA career is really questionable? You look at that because, just like, for example, Markelle
Like
Fultz.
in question, as in he's going to fall out of the league?
Yeah. Because you look at, for example, I'm not saying completely. I guarantee there's a team
I
that will
think
go
he's young
all
enough
in.
not to fall out of
No,
the
totally.
league.
But you look at
Like
Markelle
you look
Fultz.
at Zaire Williams and Dayron Sharp and
Yeah.
Jake Larabia. I mean, I would ink Cole Anthony to a deal above them. I would say Cole
Oh,
Anthony is
totally.
probably in that $8 million range right now. That's
But
what I would give him.
this is my whole thing too with Cole Anthony, though. My whole thing with Cole Anthony is you look at his future and it's like, all right, has he really played up to his expectations? No, not really. But I feel like there's still a future with Cole Anthony. However, it's like, all right, could this be a longer one to get done, because obviously you still saw with Isaac Okoro, who was also some breaking news a couple of days ago, was traded for Lonzo Ball. Sorry, I got the two Ball
Oh,
brothers
now, Griffin.
mixed up. I know. I was trying to think about it in my head really quick, and I spoke before I even thought. But you think about Isaac Okoro, who last year, his contract was kind of in the later stages of free agency, obviously. But, if Cole Anthony gets bought out, potentially that could be the case too. I do believe that he's not one, though, to kind of turn your heads on. I feel like he's still a player that can prove a lot. As you said, Seamus, he's young and he still has a lot more to prove. However, he's one of the players where it's like, all right, what team could you really see him working out with? That's the question you have to ask. But back to the Grizzlies, though, it looks like there's a lot of question marks there. Obviously, extending Jaren Jackson Jr., having a core with him and Ja Morant. It's like, what do you build for now? Having Contavious Caldwell Pope, are they going to try to work to be competitive in the future? Are they going to kind of go like more so a route that the Celtics are going in, kind of a bridge year and build for the future? Or it's more confusing in Memphis what's going on with the Grizzlies' future than it is the Celtics. I feel like they're very confusing because it's like, all right, are we trying to win now? Obviously, you see that 5-year contract. It's like, all right, can we build for the next 2 years? It's like, what are we doing in Memphis? I feel like that's the big question for sure.
Memphis is in a state of exactly what you said. Not exactly sure where they're going at this point in time, but I would say, well, here's the thing. The direction which they're trying to go definitively is Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. building around both of them with the assets which they just attained for Desmond Bain, plus all of their different players on their roster right now who are still very young and they have under good deals. Memphis, there's definitely a pathway for them to retool this thing on the fly with Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., Triple J, in the next couple of seasons, in the next 2 to 3 seasons, right? But in the meantime, right, what is their season, what is their standing in the Western Conference actually going to look like next season and the season beyond that? I mean, I think in the next 2 years, that's when you're questioning what exactly will the Grizzlies look like in that time frame? Will they be a frisky competitive team? Will they be amidst the bottom of the Western Conference? I would say they're probably in that play-in range, just like they were last year. Now, what's odd about last year is they were fighting for the 2 seed for most of the year before the end of the season when the team fired Taylor Jenkins. And even before that, the team was falling off the cliff. Let's face it, the Grizzlies were not.
Yep.
I mean, they just couldn't. The narrative around them, and the narrative wasn't just a narrative. It was true. They couldn't beat good teams. Their only wins came against bad teams at the end of the season. And the Grizzlies, they fell off a cliff when it came to the standings. They wound up in the play-in tournament. They lose in Golden State. Ja Morant turns his ankle there. They need to win at home against the Mavericks. They eventually do. And they get swept in the first round by the Oklahoma City Thunder
Yep.
as an 8 seed. And that's probably where Memphis is going to be the next 2 years. And Memphis was that before last season, everybody was going, well, Memphis, watch out because they're back, right? The last 2 seasons,
Yeah,
injury prone, Ja Morant out, Ja Morant drama, all of that, right? But last season, people were saying, oh, well, watch out for the Grizzlies. And it seemed like everybody was right halfway through the season when they were the number 2 seed. But then everything fell off a cliff. And now going into the future, that's where I question, can they be frisky again? Right? Thomas
totally.
Isola, he's going to be the head coach next season. He was the interim for Taylor Jenkins, now going to be the head coach next season. Can they be frisky again? Can they
Yeah,
grab a top 4 seed? And I don't want to say again. Well, you can say again from 22-23. Then they grabbed the number 2 seed then, and even the year before in 21-22, they were the 2 seed 2 years in a row. But can the Grizzlies, where they're at right now with the roster they hold in the Western Conference, because the Western Conference is just it is a competitive
it is.
landscape. It might be 1 through 15 next year, might be going into the season in the Western Conference 1 through 15 with the
Breaking
intention of
news.
competing. Now we
Breaking
know,
news. Breaking
okay,
news.
here we go.
Via Shams Sharania, DAngelo Russell has agreed on a 2-year, $13 million deal with the Dallas Mavericks. Wow.
So there you
And
go. There's another
well,
Western Conference competitor, the Dallas
and
Mavericks.
there's some more that I was gonna wait to say because this one isn't as big. But again, breaking news via Shams Charania, free agent guard Trey Jones has agreed on a 3-year, $24 million deal to return to the Chicago Bulls. But the big news being DAngelo Russell going to the Mavericks. What, Seamus, we got to talk about this really quick because we got to get right on the topic about this. I feel like this is a little big, just drafting Cooper Flag, but not huge, but this gives you an option for a point guard until Kyrie Irving returns later in the season.
100%.
But
100%. That is yes, you're right. The underrated part about this deal is Cooper Flag starting point guard going into the season may very well be DAngelo Russell if there are no more moves. And this move was expected. This one was heavily leaked before free agency, and this is where you just go, okay, I understand, players are not supposed to talk to teams before free agency begins, but clearly there's some talking going on beforehand because the rumored deal was 2 years, $12 million, and this one turns out to be, well, some people have it as 2 years, $12 million. Some people have it as 2 years, $13 million. But this was a rumored deal before the free agency deadline here, and DAngelo Russell definitely gives the Mavericks another ball handling guard in which they need, because the Mavericks, we talked about them a lot on the Drew Holiday special, and the Mavericks, they were such a candidate for Drew Holiday because they lacked guard depth with Kyrie Irving out of the lineup, and well, Kyrie Irving, let's specify that, out with the torn ACL, will probably be out up until January. We're guessing we have somewhere around there. Could be earlier, could be later. We never know. But Kyrie Irving is going to be out for part of next season. Dante Exum, he's a free agent. Spencer Dinwiddie, he's a free agent, and that leads a guard room of Jaden Hardy and Brandon Williams. Yes, those are two intriguing young players for the Mavericks, but not two guards you want leading your entire offense, especially with Cooper Flag coming in the building. And now DAngelo Russell, he makes his way down to Dallas from Brooklyn for a second time. He played with the Nets for a second time, and of course the Lakers second time. So DAngelo Russell making Nets and Lakers a second time, both of those destinations now in Dallas. The interesting part about this to me is, how does DAngelo Russell fit next to the cast of characters in Dallas, especially with Cooper Flag and Anthony Davis. And DAngelo Russell, he is a player who can be a good playmaker, but can be a little overzealous sometimes with his own shot, his own opportunities, and he's one of those players where he has all the tools, has all the skills, but sometimes the decision making just isn't there. The efficiency just isn't always there. But this is a good deal for DAngelo Russell and the Mavericks. 2 years, $12 million. He's on a competitive team. He could boost his stock even further from where he is right now, and he's made some pretty good money in his NBA career. And
breaking news.
Oh my
Breaking
goodness.
news.
Oh my goodness. Here, you want me to
Wow.
let's give this one out. Woo, this was a big one, folks.
This
is a big one. Per Shams Charania breaking, the Denver Nuggets are trading Michael Porter Jr. and an unprotected 2032 first round pick to the Brooklyn Nets for Cam Johnson. Sources tell ESPN.
Wow.
A big unexpected trade comes through the ticker here. Woo! The Denver Nuggets trading Michael Porter Jr. and a 2032 first round pick to the Brooklyn Nets for Cam Johnson. And that 2032 first round pick is unprotected.
Well, Seamus,
that is a big one.
I was going to say this. I was going to say this, though. I was going to say it's questionable what's going to go on with the Nets, with DAngelo Russell now going to the Mavericks. However, now this is a big one, Seamus. This, again, like you said, this is a big one, bringing think I might have lost you, Seamus. I might
All
have
right.
disconnected right there.
No, we're good. We're good. Keep going.
Yeah, no, but this is a big one, bringing Michael Porter Jr. now to the Nets and Cam Johnson to the Nuggets. This is definitely a questionable one for me because it's like, would you say, and honestly, sorry, having some technical issues on my end. Can you still hear me, Seamus?
Yes. Yes. Keep going, Griffin. Keep going. We can hear you. We might not be able to see you, but we can hear you. Okay, we can't hear you anymore, Griffin. All right. Well, I'm going to go in on this trade here because this is a pretty big one. First of all, Cam Johnson next season, $20.5 million. And then the season afterwards, $22.5 million. So Cam Johnson, about $43 million left on his 2 year. Oh, here comes Griffin back.
Wait, did you already break the news about Ty Jerome?
Timeout. No.
All right,
Nope. Griffin, stop. Nope. Nope. Let's
I
get to
just
this trade first,
disconnected.
and then let's get to that news. Hold up.
I know.
Hold
I
up.
just
Let's
disconnected,
let's
so I
get to
wasn't
this.
sure
Let's
what
get to
train
this.
we're on.
First of
Yep, let's
all,
get there.
Cameron Johnson, $20.5 million next year, $22.5 million the year after. That is huge as a salary alleviation for the Denver Nuggets. That's $43 million over the next 2 seasons paid to Cam Johnson. And the Denver Nuggets did give up an unprotected 2032 first round pick in this deal. And compare that to Michael Porter Jr.'s deal, $38.3 million next season, and then $40.8 million the season after in 26-27. So the Nuggets saved themselves quite a bit of cash in this deal. So they're going down from 38.3 to Cam Johnson's 20.5 in year one. And then in year two, they're going down from, let's see, they're going down Michael Porter Jr.'s deal in year two, $40.8 million. And that's an unguaranteed deal. But $40.8 million for Michael Porter Jr. and then Brooklyn. They're taking in Michael Porter Jr., sending Cam Johnson to the Nuggets 22.5 in that second year. So the Nuggets saving
Yeah.
quite a bit of cash. So that is a huge trade for the Denver Nuggets. That 2032 unprotected first round pick is the gem of this trade because the Nuggets, they might not be competitive in that year, and you're giving out a pick that's far down the line, 7 years from now, right? We don't know what Jokic is going to look like in 7 years. We don't know what the Nuggets are going to look like in 7 years. But part of this deal is the Nuggets. In the meantime, they're getting a player who is maybe considered better than Michael Porter Jr. In Cameron Johnson. He's cheaper than Michael Porter Jr. and I believe he's also younger than Michael Porter Jr. as well. So what are your
Seamus,
thoughts on this deal, Griffin?
yeah.
First.
Sorry, I disconnected there. It's interesting what the Brooklyn Nets are doing. I feel like they're going more so in a route, obviously that the Wizards are going in, and it's very questionable because the Wizards obviously getting Marcus Smart, Chris Middleton, and getting rid of their young pieces. And you look at this, the Nets are kind of doing the same. Obviously, Cam Johnson, I don't believe I'm going to have to look up the age, but I don't believe he's too much younger than Michael Porter Jr. But
Michael
definitely,
Porter Jr. is actually my bad. Michael Porter Jr. is 2 years younger than
oh,
Cameron Johnson. My bad.
okay.
So
All
Michael
right.
Porter Jr. is
But,
27. Cameron Johnson is 29.
okay.
Little
A
crazy
little younger.
stat
Yeah, a
there
little
because if you think about
but,
the draft
but
classes of those two players,
yeah.
for sure.
But I have to say this, Seamus. With Cam Johnson, though, I feel like, Cam Johnson is obviously a little better of a player. So it's just interesting to see them make this move. And obviously, you saw them, getting Terrence Mann too, involved in that Kristaps Porzingis trade. So it's like they're the team that's kind of taking in a lot of the salary because they don't have a lot of salary on their books. So they're kind of going to be a team where them and you might see Washington be the team that are going to take some of the salary. But Seamus, can I break some news really quick?
First of all, wait a minute. So
Do you want to give a little more?
the Nuggets save $17.8 million in year one, and then in year two, the Nuggets are saving. Let's see. The Nuggets are saving $18.3 million. So the Nuggets are saving $17 million in year one, $18 million in year two. That's a big chunk of change for the Nuggets to save, especially in this Jokic era where it felt like they were a little hampered on their moves here. And in year one, let's see. So they're saving $17 million in year one. That takes them way that almost takes them. Let's see. I got my salary sheets here. That takes them below the luxury tax line. So they get Cameron Johnson and they dip below the luxury tax line, the Denver Nuggets do. That's a pretty good deal for the Denver Nuggets. I don't know how much better they really got in this deal. I mean, you might want to say, okay, Cameron Johnson, maybe a little bit more reliable in a playoff setting. He is 2 years older. It's really weird. Cameron Johnson was drafted a year after Michael Porter Jr., but that's that's the whole age, when you talk about, the age in the draft, right? We don't want to draft 23-year-old players. Well, this is part of the reason why Cameron Johnson drafted in 2019. He's already 29 years old here in 2025. Michael Porter Jr., 27 years old. I don't know how much better the Nuggets really got in this deal, but I think just from a player perspective, I'm not sure how much better the Nuggets really got. But I will say from a cap alleviation standpoint, the Nuggets, they're now going to have the ability to make other moves and spend a little bit more excessively other places around Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Now Cameron Johnson, Aaron Gordon, that's your core if you're the Denver Nuggets. And Russell Westbrook's still very much up in the air. We'll see with him. DeAndre Jordan, another free agent for the Denver Nuggets. But the Nuggets are all of a sudden in a pretty good position now. Go out and make other moves to further their roster from where it is right now. And I think that's the big point in that trade is Michael Porter Jr. for Cam Johnson. You're getting something a little bit new there. Maybe not getting a huge upgrade. Like Michael Porter Jr. and Cam Johnson isn't a huge upgrade, but it now provides the path for Denver to make upgrades elsewhere, which could make their roster better in the long run. It's all about the money. It's all about the $17 and $18 million the Denver Nuggets are saving in years 1 and 2. And I'll say the 2032 unprotected pick, that's pretty risky. 7 years from now, Nikola Jokic, I mean, he's going to be in his late 30s, so you never know how that could turn out. And it's unprotected as well, so no protections on that one. However, moving on here.
Well, Seamus,
some more breaking news.
One more take, too.
Rattle it off, Griffin.
One more take really quick, too, on that. You look at that, Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson both being acquired from the Nets in that Kevin Durant trade, obviously. Right? I believe it. Yeah, it was the Kevin Durant trade. So you look at that, those two assets now are just gone. So, but can I break some news really quick for us?
Rattle them off, Griffin. No, yeah. We're all about breaking news here.
Two breaking news via Shams Charania. Free agent guard Kevin Porter Jr. has agreed to a 2-year, $11 million deal to return to the Milwaukee Bucks. All right, that's the first one, but we want to get into this spicy one because we've been talking a lot about the Grizzlies right now. And sorry, I did not mean to interrupt with obviously that going on, but free agent.
Whoa, timeout. I have another Denver Nuggets tidbit.
Well,
I have another Denver Nuggets tidbit. I'm gonna break this. Per Shams Charania, free agent Bruce Brown has agreed to a 1-year deal with the Denver Nuggets, sources tell ESPN. So Bruce Brown, Brucey B, finally returns to Denver. Michael Malone was standing up there on the podium saying, we're going to have Bruce Brown back. And everybody's going, no, you're not. Another team's going to, the Denver Nuggets cannot give him the money he's going to demand. And of course, the Indiana Pacers go out there and pay him his rightful due. Bounces from the Pacers to the Raptors in the Siakam deal. And then from the Raptors to the Pelicans and the Brandon Ingram deal, and now winds up back with the Denver Nuggets, where he won the championship back in 2023. And the Denver Nuggets, they're making some moves. Cameron Johnson and Bruce Brown, and no more Michael Porter Jr. This is quite a big day for the Denver Nuggets so far. Wow.
And I know Nuggets fans are happy about that for sure, because that's a fan favorite over there in Denver. So you gotta look at that one. But can I break the news now, because this is long awaited? Breaking news via Sham Charania. Free agent guard Ty Jerome has agreed to a 3-year, $28 million deal with the Memphis Grizzlies. Wow, that's a big one too. I feel like that's one where you gotta shine a little more light on it, because we just talked about this too with the Grizzlies. No, you gotta shine a little more light on this,
No,
because
I'm surprised. I'm surprised at the number he got. Only
no,
9 million per year for
yeah,
Ty Jerome. I would
well,
say that is, for me personally, where I would slot him in. But I
totally,
think there were
totally.
people thinking in the middle of the season, when he is a sixth man of the year candidate, he's going to get upwards of 15 to 20 million dollars. He
Oh
only comes
yeah,
up with 9. So $28 million for 3 years. Is
that's a
that what you're
steal for
telling me?
Memphis. Yeah, that's a steal for Memphis. And I tell you what, oh, some other breaking
Okay,
news.
more news. My
Breaking
goodness.
news via Sham Charania, free agent not guard, center. Cavon Looney has agreed to a 2-year, $16 million deal with the New Orleans Pelicans. Wow.
So the
Wow. Some
Pelicans finally
news breaking fast.
finally inking a center. I mean, my goodness, the Pelicans, well, they did trade up 10 spots to go get Derek Queen. So there is a center there. And now you have Cavon Looney and Missy. So all of a sudden, a pretty formidable center rotation, a big man rotation for the New Orleans Pelicans, after having a questionable one for the entirety of the 24-25 season. I mean, for most of the season, it was Daniel Tyson and their rookie Missy. Right now, for next season, it's going to be Looney, Missy, Derek Queen, and well, as Griffin. Oh, he's having. Oh, let's see, his back. Here we go. We're. Well, I don't know if the summer heat is getting it's blowing a bit far north here up to Maine. It's
Well,
getting the internet up there.
we talked about that with Coach AJ that one time with that summer heat. Whew, it's really affected my Wi-Fi. I tell you what.
But let's also mention this with Cavon Looney. Cavon Looney has been with the Warriors since, I think, 2015. That's how long Cavon Looney's been with the Warriors, so nearly 10 years. Let's get the actual data on this one with Cavon Looney. Let's pull it up. Let's get the actual stats. And he's a multi-time champion, obviously, the Golden State Warriors. Yes, his rookie season was 2015-16. So Cavon Looney's rookie season was the Warriors' 73-9 season, all the way back in 2015-16. And Cavon Looney was the I believe the 30th pick. Let's see, 30th. Yes, the 30th pick overall. So the Baylor Shireman pick, which I'm not sure if anybody can see Griffin up on screen or not right now. We apologize for the technical difficulties Griffin's having up there in Maine. However, Cavon Looney, he's been with the Golden State Warriors since 2015, the summer of 2015. So he's been there for 10 years, 10 seasons with the Golden State Warriors, played 599 games in the regular season, and in the playoffs played 89 games for the Warriors, won 2 titles in 17-18, the Warriors winning the title that year in 17-18. He also won the title in Cavon Looney that year also won the title, with the Golden State Warriors in 16-17. However, was injured during that playoff run, so not in his game log, but a 3-time champion with the Golden State Warriors, 16-17, 17-18, and then the dreaded one for Celtics fans, 21-22. And Cavon Looney, you could argue, the most impactful title run for him was that 21-22 season, when he was the Warriors starting center on that team. And I'll never forget Cavon Looney just physically out rebounding the Celtics in the finals back in 2022, and him alongside Andrew Wiggins was truly, from a Celtics fan standpoint, it was harrowing to watch, but you had to respect the effort and the attitude in which the Warriors were playing with at the end of that series, particularly their center Cavon Looney, who is now on his way to New Orleans. He'll be playing alongside Missy, the Pelicans rookie last year, and then Derek Queen, Pelicans rookie this year. They moved up 10 spots to get and gave up their unprotected 2026 first round pick to do. So Cavon Looney on his way to New Orleans, played 10 years with the Warriors, a 3-time champion, now on his way to New Orleans, and gets it. Let's see his deal now, 2 years, $16 million, so $8 million per year for 2 years for Cavon Looney. And now the Warriors are lacking a center, as Griffin is back within our program here.
Well, let's see for how long, as my Wi-Fi, it's going through some problems right now, it looks like.
Yeah, well, this is we're doing good. We're doing good. I mean, it could be. Let's face it. There's a lot worse. I'm thinking back to this season. Some of my technical difficulties that went on, and I mean, there were moments where I couldn't even hear you guys. I couldn't, like, the
Oh yeah,
stream was
the delays
oriented. Yep. All of that.
All right, I will say for everyone at Celtics Talk Weekly, you guys know from the delay streams, that was great times because we would talk. We'd have to give Seamus like 5 to 10 seconds to hear our whole thing, and then he'd go along. But good old times, that's for sure. That's when when that happened, Seamus, the Celtics team was still at their peak. Like with the core, they still had everyone. So some good times on the program for sure.
Well, right. Those were, we're gonna look back at those times and go, they're gonna be good times, but they're also gonna be like, oh, the path to just total destruction, right? Tatum tears his Achilles, and Drew and Chris Styles gone. But you got to remember the good moments, okay, folks. You got to remember the good moments, and potentially somebody we're going to have to really remember the good moments with is our guy Al Horford. Okay, Al Horford. Now, within the last piece of news, right? Cavon Looney heading out to New Orleans, or rather down to New Orleans from Golden State, from San Francisco. The Warriors, that leaves a little bit of room in their center rotation, a little bit of a gap in their big man rotation, and it's rumored that the Warriors are targeting Al Horford in free agency. And this is how it reads from the Stein line per NBA Central at the Dunk Central on Twitter, and this is via the Stein line. League sources say veteran center Al Horford will be a top target for Golden State in free agency. Jonathan Kuminga's restricted free agency, by contrast, is expected to be a slow-moving process for Golden State. It did not appear as of lunchtime Monday that the Warriors or Kuminga's representation had a specific resolution in mind for the 22-year-old forward's immediate future. However, the big line in here is league sources say veteran center Al Horford will be a top target for Golden State per the Stein line. So the Warriors targeting Al Horford. However, per Adam Himmelsbach, he is told Al Horford continues to mull potential options for next season and at the moment appears unlikely to have a final decision on the first day of free agency. So that would be today. You could even consider, I mean, tomorrow used to be the first day of free agency, the July 1st date, but now June 30th. However, those rumors coming out about Al Horford, the Warriors interested in Al Horford. I'm hearing a lot of Knicks for Al Horford too, but I can't really find a tangible report other than just people suggesting the Knicks would be a good location.
Gosh, breaking news.
Man, we should have done him first, because the Clippers and Spurs, they're interested in Luke Kornet, and I think one of them maybe just netted our guy.
Well, breaking news via Shams Charania, free agent center Luke Kornet has agreed to a 4-year, $41 million deal with the San Antonio Spurs. Wow. End of an era. I just said that, Seamus, and this is officially an end of an era with Luke Kornet on the way to San Antonio. This is heartbreaking. This is devastating. If you're a Celtics fan, it's not even the fact that, the talent's gone. This is more so the fact that you know, the role that he gives in the locker room to Celtics community, the funniness that Luke Kornet does, the clips, we'll always remember that. But Luke Kornet is on the way to the Spurs now with a 4-year, $41 million deal. Seamus, what are your thoughts on this?
4 years, $41 million. So that's around $10 million per year for Luke Kornet. And we almost started. We went to Al Horford first, but we could have gone to Luke Kornet first, and that definitely wipes out the next segment. All right, that we still get to talk about Al Horford, but that wipes out 100% the next segment about Luke Kornet, as Luke Kornet now inks a deal with the San Antonio Spurs, around $10 million per year. Luke Kornet signs in San Antonio. We held quite a few conversations on Postgame this past season about the likelihood of Luke Kornet moving elsewhere this summer because of how good or how well he was playing. Let's face it. I mean, there was a certain point in the season where we were going, Luke Kornet, we thought it would be a shoo-in that the Celtics just bring him back this summer, but he's playing pretty well to a point where he might actually receive a pretty hefty contract from a team, and he makes $10 million per year. He makes more money than Ty Jerome and more long-term money than Ty Jerome, Luke Kornet does as a center. And we'll get into the conversation of whether big men out there potentially are surpassing guards just in terms of supply and demand value. But Luke Kornet now on his way to the San Antonio Spurs. And it was rumored that the Spurs and Clippers were in on Luke Kornet. That was one of our main talking points we were going to get into on this free agency live here before. Yeah, it's unfortunate Luke Kornet, I gone. Such a good personality in the Celtics locker room.
Totally.
Built his way up in here. This is the official report from Shams Charania. Free agent center Luke Kornet has agreed to a 4-year, $41 million deal. The San Antonio Spurs, sources tell ESPN, key front court addition for the Spurs, who negotiated a contract tonight with Kornet's agent Max Weepking of Gersh Sports. So Luke Kornet on his way to San Antonio. A great personality in the locker room and somebody who really built up his reputation inside the halls of the Celtics organization, and a champion with the Boston Celtics. So forever immortalized within the Celtics organization and the fan base out there. And I will say Luke Kornet, he is look at the journey in which he partook in Boston, right? 2021, in March of 2021, he's traded to the Celtics in a 3-team deal between the Bulls and the Wizards that included Daniel Tice and Javonte Green heading to Chicago, Luke Kornet heading back to the Celtics, Mo Wagner heading to the Celtics, and it was assumed in that deal, Luke Kornet, he's he's just going to be waived, and that's going to be that. Well, Luke Kornet stayed on the roster, and in the summer, the Celtics let him go. He bounced around a bit. He was playing with the Milwaukee Herd and the Canton Charge down in the G League, and then the next season, the Celtics offer him up a deal when the whole it might have been a two-way deal at first, and then it turned into a standard deal. The history on that I would have to go back on, but regardless, 21-22, the Celtics brought Luke Kornet back into the building, and he was back on the roster. And then eventually, the Celtics they bring him into the rotation the next season in 22-23. He's the 12th, 13th, 14th guy on the roster that next season, Luke Kornet. It's very shocking to see that 22-23 season, which wasn't that long ago. But Peyton Pritchard and Luke Kornet, they were down in the rotation, but Luke Kornet, he's added to the roster again in 21-22, and the Celtics make their finals run 22-23 season. He's on a standard deal. He's at the back end of the rotation. And then in 23-24, finally propels himself into the main part of the Celtics rotation. And he's essentially their 8th, 9th, 10th man, right? And then this season, he pretty well has a breakout year. And after winning the championship last year with the Celtics, after playing real rotation minutes with the Celtics last season, Luke Kornet comes in this season, and he is one of the more important Celtics bench pieces behind Peyton Pritchard and Al Horford. It's the third guy we mentioned all season long, the definitive 8th man of the Celtics. And even, let's face it, on some nights, the 7th man or even the 6th man, depending on the personnel, was Luke Kornet. And Luke Kornet in the playoffs, forever going to remember Game 5, Luke Kornet, 7 blocks in Game 5. It still blows me away. 7 blocks, 5 blocks in that third quarter. The game after Jason Tatum tore his Achilles, Luke Kornet comes out and puts on just a phenomenal performance. And that was his last game at TD Garden. So his last game at TD Garden, Luke Kornet comes up with 7 blocks. And eventually we know his last game as a Celtic didn't end too well at MSG. But now Luke Kornet on to San Antonio. And another notable detail in here is Luke Kornet. Great game in San Antonio earlier this season, down in San Antonio. If I'm looking at his game, I believe he had a career high. We covered it back on Postgame when it happened. A career high in rebounds that night for Luke Kornet. That was against San Antonio. And let me find the exact date. So that was March 29th, right, at San Antonio. The Celtics win 121 to 111. Luke Kornet plays 31 minutes, shoots 7 of 10 from the floor, comes up with 16 rebounds, 7 offensive rebounds that night, 4 assists, 1 steal. He scores 15 points as well. So Luke Kornet dominated the Spurs back on March 29th. And I just wonder, right, those 16 rebounds, that double-double, that 7 of 10 shooting, I just wonder if that played a little bit of a factor in the Spurs' interest in Luke Kornet this summer. Now the Spurs inking Luke Kornet to a 4-year, $41 million deal. Luke Kornet on his way to San Antonio. However, Griffin, we have a couple more deals coming our way.
Yeah, we do. Well, Seamus, I could break the first one talking about big men in Luke Kornet. We also have some other breaking news. Via Shams Charania, free agent center Clint Capella has agreed to a 3-year, $21.5 million deal with the Houston Rockets. Wow. So the Rockets making some big additions this offseason, now adding Clint Capella to the roster. And there's also some more breaking news, Seamus. So hang tight as via Shams Charania, free agent guard Caris LeVert has agreed to a 2-year, $29 million deal with the Detroit Pistons. Sources tell ESPN. Well, I have to say this before we even dive into that really quick, but I wanna finish up on what I was gonna say with Luke too. As Celtics fans, we all knew today was gonna be a very heartbreaking and hard day. Being a Celtics fan, and before our very eyes, our one and only favorite Luke Kornet is no longer on the roster. And, I feel like days that we were nervous for, draft night, we were nervous. We were like, oh, will Brown and White still be on the roster? But then at the same time, when, obviously the draft concluded, we were like, hey, we have some new additions. But now this is the day that Celtics fans are dreading, as Luke Kornet is no longer on the roster. But I feel, even being said, probably out of our price range, but I don't even know, a 3-year, $21.5 million deal. Clint Capella could have obviously been a backup center, like a backup option for the Celtics to go after, but now signing with the Houston Rockets. But what are your thoughts, Seamus, on these two deals?
Okay. So first of all, well, let's start off with, so first, my first initial reaction on Caris LeVert's deal. Well, it's only 2 years, but $14 million a year for Caris LeVert. I'm just, I don't know. Maybe I'll maybe value him a little lesser than that for the Pistons. I'm just saying, off the bench, $14 million seems a little.
Well, Seamus,
I just see this Caris LeVert deal. I'm sorry, I don't see it being worth it in a year, or I don't see it being worth. I don't see it being worth it halfway through next season. I don't see people looking at Caris LeVert's $14 million deal and going, "Yep, $14 million for Caris LeVert." No, that is to me a tradable salary that doesn't have a ton of value from a player perspective, but has value from a salary filler perspective for the Detroit Pistons, who could round up a bunch. Like Caris LeVert, this signing could be a signing where the Pistons are gearing up to, in the future, make a run at another player with tradable contracts. In the meantime, he gives you, and we don't know what Malik Beasley, this could be a hedge against the Malik Beasley allegations, the gambling allegations with Malik Beasley.
That's what I was going to say. This could be a backup option because we
Well,
don't
I
know
mean, if
what
you
could go
think about
along.
it, so
So
Malik Beasley, let's talk about the Pistons real quick, and then we'll get on to the Rockets and Clint Capella here. But so the Pistons, they so okay, wow, Ooh, that might actually be a hedge against Malik Beasley because Malik Beasley came out uh, that Malik Beasley is under federal investigation, not NBA investigation. Okay, he's not being investigated by the league. He's being investigated by the federal government, folks. Malik Beasley is being investigated by the federal government on gambling allegations revolving around prop bets and games. And these allegations come from the 23-24 season when Malik Beasley was with the Milwaukee Bucks. And very suspicious time, I'll say. These rumors come out, or these allegations rather, and the investigation news comes out right before his free agency. Right before his free
yeah,
agency, this comes out. Very suspicious in my mind, especially for something that happened in 23-24. It feels like people probably knew about this for a while, and it just came out to the public before his free agency because it was rumored that the Pistons and Malik Beasley were in talks to ink a 3-year, $42 million deal at the start of free agency. However, those talks are now on pause, and Malik Beasley had other suitors around the league lining up to give him some moolah as well. Though all of those talks are on pause now for Malik Beasley after these allegations of gambling came out on Malik Beasley. But what I'll point out here is Karis LeVert plays the same role as Malik Beasley. I would personally, I mean,
yes,
either one of those players, I feel like it's the pendulum is a little like this: is you're not going up or down too far on either Malik Beasley or Karis LeVert. But Karis LeVert, he inks a 2-year, $29 million deal, right? So that's around $14 million per. The 3-year, $42 million deal rumored to be out there for Malik Beasley, that's also $14 million per year. So essentially, right now, the Pistons, they were lining up to pay Beasley $14 million per year to be that, he's kind of that combo shooting guard forward, not a main ball handler, but somebody who can handle the ball. His primary skill is shooting the ball, whether that be off the dribble or mostly off the catch within that offense. But that shooting guard, maybe you can play that small forward role, that 2-3 spot, right? Well, now the Pistons, they don't pay Malik Beasley $14 million per year. Now they're paying Karis LeVert, who literally plays the same position, that midway 2-3 spot, right? Fills some of the same role as Malik Beasley. They're paying Karis LeVert. The Pistons are paying Karis LeVert $14 million per year to do exactly the same thing as Malik Beasley. So I wonder if that deal for Malik Beasley is now off the table, or if the Pistons are still interested. Would that make any sense, signing both of those players to $14 million deals per year, one 2 years, one 3 years? But the Malik Beasley allegations, whew, Malik Beasley, this has to be I'm sorry. This is just stupid. How stupid can you be? A $42 million deal is on the line, and now he's being investigated by the federal government for gambling allegations regarding prop bets and games in general. But it's very uncertain what will happen with Malik Beasley on the precipice of free agency here. However, his team, the Detroit Pistons, just inked somebody to a similar deal, playing the exact same position, holding fair value to himself. I mean, I would say Levert and Beasley, they're similar players when it comes to their value. I'm more of a Beasley guy personally. That might be a personal bias just with his journey and everything else, and the film I've watched. But they're right. They're not far away from each other, and the Pistons just gave what potentially could have been Malik Beasley's money to Karis LeVert. That could have just happened. And Karis LeVert, I'm surprised, $14 million. I would slot him into the more $10 million range. Maybe he is a little bit more. He maybe is worth a little bit more than that. I could see him getting to 14 with the Pistons. I would say that's his. He probably got the best deal he could out on the free agency market. I'm surprised he got $5 million more than Ty Jerome. Now I'm not a huge Ty Jerome fan. I believe he's a little small of a guard, and I see his contribution off the bench a little bit overrated if you were to pay him more money, right? I think $9 million is fair for Ty Jerome. That's where I just feel like, oh, the evaluation of the market was where the fair value actually was. Nobody was actually willing to overpay Ty Jerome and give him 15 plus $1 million per year. I thought that would be a little too pricey of a tag for Ty Jerome, but falls in at $9 million. That's a pretty good deal for the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm just a little surprised Karis LeVert got $5 million more than that in the end. But that's what I think about the Karis LeVert deal with the Pistons. And the Clint Capella deal, as for that one, the Clint Capella deal, I mean, it's a night of reunion, folks. It's a night of reunion. So we have Bruce Brown. He's back with the Nuggets, and now you have Clint Capella back with the Houston Rockets. I feel like we have another reunion somewhere. I mean, we've had a million reunions with guys re-signing with their teams, right? But more reunions elsewhere. We were talking about DAngelo Russell's reunions with the Lakers and Nets earlier, but he's on his way to the Mavs. But a night of reunion here in the NBA. Clint Capella to the Rockets. So the Rockets, let's see, in the so they just, let's mention this for the Rockets. They just inked Jabari Smith to a $122 million deal, a 5-year, $122 million deal. The Houston Rockets gave Jabari Smith Jr. I will say that deal, that's a make or break deal next season. Either next season that deal is going to look amazing for the Rockets, and Jabari Smith takes his game up to another level, still being the young guy in which he is, or next season that deal is going to look a little hefty. It's going to look a little bit like the Michael Porter Jr. deal, where you go, ooh, I'm not really sure about that number for that caliber of player. But Jabari Smith Jr., he's my thing with Jabari Smith Jr. is he's hardly proven himself as that level of player yet in the NBA. A 25. I mean, if you think about it, Naz Reid, he's been a part of 2 Western Conference Finals teams as the sixth man, won sixth man of the year, right? Naz Reid, he makes $125 million over the next 5 years. Naz Reid does with the Timberwolves. And now Jabari Smith, who's basically done nothing as a young guy. Okay, he's played well. He's developed okay. He's not been a star. Like if you look at the other 2 players in his draft that he was going up against for the potential number 1 overall pick in 2022, it was between Boncaro, Holmgren, and Jabari Smith. Those 3 players, Jabari Smith was picked 3rd. Holmgren and Boncaro, they've gone on to be stars, right? Boncaro, a literal all-star. Holmgren, and now NBA champion. And that's circumstance, I understand. But Jabari Smith Jr., kind of the ugly duckling of the pack, right? He's not a bad player, I understand, but that term, right? He's the lesser of those 3, and hasn't shown that star potential yet. But I'll say he was the youngest of those 3, so there was more time for Jabari Smith to get up to that next level, and that could be next season for Jabari Smith Jr. signing that 122 for 5 years, that 5-year $122 million deal. That deal is basically the same deal as Naz Reid's deal, but Naz Reid is a proven NBA player and a proven rotation piece, a proven big in this league, a versatile big, who can shoot it from beyond the arc, a stretch 5, a true stretch 5 that can play the 4 as well. Jabari Smith, he could be that in his NBA career. He could be even better than that in his NBA career. And that's where this deal could look really good in time. But as for right now, he hasn't proven himself, and it's definitely that deal, that $122 million deal for Jabari Smith is certainly a gamble for Houston, but it's one that I think they feel comfortable taking with Kevin Durant on their roster, their future relatively secure right now with all of their young assets, and knowing the deal is not the 122 for 5 years, right? It's not a $40 million per year deal. I mean, you're looking at what, around $25 million per year, and that's still a tradable contract at the end of the day. It's not a $40 million deal. It's a $25 million deal for the Rockets there. But I
Well,
do want to dive in real quick
Seamus,
with the Rockets.
before we dive in, I'm gonna have to exit the stream, but I want to give one final conclusion before I do leave about just with overall free agency. There, we talked about Brad Stevens during, with the draft about him saying there's going to be fireworks. Well, we're seeing fireworks before our very own eyes with free agency. And Luke Kornet obviously no longer on the Boston Celtics, and it could get more rough too for the Celtics, obviously, as Al Horford still a free agent. And I know you'll probably dive into that a little more, Seamus. I might be able to join you back on here later, but I will have to say this hurts. As a Celtics fan, you're looking at this day and you're dreading this day because it hurts. Obviously we don't have the salary to negotiate with other teams that other teams can provide. So it sucks, but I'm saying this from my heart. Celtics will be back. We'll be back. But Seamus, I will say I'm gonna pull this up one more time. If you don't mind finding that Luke Kornet tweet really quick, as I just wanted to mention one more thing too before I head out of there.
Let's see here. Let's pull this up on stream. Also, do we want to mention this before you go here? Let's get the news out. There's so there are so many news stories you can't even find the one that you want to that you the whole line of notifications right now. It's crazy.
It
So
is.
let's give out this news real quick as I go and find the official word on it, and it revolves around a former Celtic. Which, if I can find the news, let's see. I am having some difficulties finding this news. It's like, did it happen? Also, more news.
Oh,
Free agent center Brooke Lopez has agreed to a 2-year, $18 million deal with the Los Angeles Clippers. So, wow. The Los Angeles Lakers miss out on Brooke Lopez. It was rumored that Brooke Lopez was going to be on his way to the Los Angeles Lakers. However, now he's on his way to the Los Angeles Clippers instead. And now an era is over in Milwaukee as Brooke Lopez exits Milwaukee, where he won a championship in 2021. And I'm failing to find the news here on one of our former Celtics. I feel as if it came out sometime earlier here, as we have a long list of notifications. But it revolves around our guy Dennis Schroeder. As
what's up
let's
with
see,
Schroeder?
Dennis Schroeder, he signed with the Sacramento Kings. Okay, I don't know the details of that. I cannot find any notifications on it somehow. But Dennis Schroeder, he is a Sacramento King as of this moment. So 10th different NBA team for Dennis Schroeder. Not sure what the details are of this deal, other than Dennis Schroeder is on his way to the Sacramento Kings per Fred Katz. So there you go. Former Celtic Dennis Schroeder on his way to the Sacramento Kings. So that was the news. We're trying to pull up here the last felt like 5 minutes there. And meanwhile, Brooke Lopez gave us a little bit. However, this is the big news that came out here. Luke Kornet signing with the San Antonio Spurs via Shams Charania. But anyway, Griffin.
Yeah, I just want to say before I head out too with this deal, it hurts again, but I feel Luke is gonna have a lot of success with the Spurs. So it hurts, but it's good for Luke getting a payday, and it's gonna be good for him. But thank you guys. I will see you guys later.
Thank you, Griffin, as Griffin exits the program behind the scenes here, and we transition over to solo talk here tonight as the Celtics, as you see on the screen, no longer housing Luke Kornet in the building in Boston. An unfortunate development for the Boston Celtics here tonight. However, we knew this could happen. Let's face it, we knew this could happen as Celtics Nation. We speculated on it for a good majority of this. I mean, a good portion of the season. Let's face it, Celtics Nation was very aware of the fact Luke Kornet could walk in free agency, and he does to the San Antonio Spurs. We talked a lot about that earlier as the news came across the ticker. Luke Kornet, a staple within the Celtics organization last couple of years. On the bench, really off the bench for the Celtics, made his way up in the organization. I mean, he did it the right way, right? He did it the right way. He wasn't handed anything with the Boston Celtics. Earned every single one of his opportunities with the C's. And now $40 million for 4 years. That's a pretty hefty salary for Luke Kornet, I will say, over the next 4 years. Only $10 million per year. Got more money, received more money on the market than Ty Jerome. So big development there for Luke Kornet. However, we were going to go on and talk about Al Horford before the Luke Kornet news, and we almost brought up Luke Kornet first, which in the long run, that should have been the move there in hindsight, as Luke Kornet now with the San Antonio Spurs. However, Al Horford, let's talk about him, because Al Horford, it was reported by Legion Hoops, the Warriors are targeting Al Horford in free agency per the Stein line, and Al Horford is a top target for the Golden State Warriors. That being said, per Adam Himmelsbach, Al Horford will continue to mull over his potential options for next season, and at the moment appears unlikely to have a final decision on the first day of free agency. So today, Al Horford not expected to sign anywhere, but Al Horford up in the air for the Celtics as well. Luke Kornet already gone to the San Antonio Spurs. Now Al Horford on the line. And another rumor that came out about the Celtics here. The Celtics were considering, this is a rumor that came out from the New York Times, the Celtics considering flipping Anthony Simons to keep Luke Kornet and Al Horford. Now, obviously, the Luke Kornet scenario is not going to happen, but Al Horford, there still could be a scenario on the table where the Celtics try to flip Anthony Simons to go out and re-sign Al Horford. That being said, I think that headline's a little ridiculous in time. The Celtics are going to go out of their way to reroute their 26-year-old newly acquired guard who serves a definitive purpose on next year's Celtics team next to Jaylen Brown as one of the main ball handlers. They're going to go trade him away for the cap alleviation to go and sign a 39-year-old Al Horford. Seems a little ridiculous to me. Seems a tad bit ridiculous, as we welcome in to the show here, as we get him up on screen, Nick Franco. Franco, Luke Kornet is gone. You're muted. Just your voice is gone, just as Luke Kornet is here on this program today.
Check.
All right, a little quiet, but we're getting up there.
Check.
All right, sounds pretty good. Pretty good.
We'll take it.
Yeah, I think we'll take that volume. I think we'll take it for sure.
Yeah. So Celtics lose out on Luke Kornet and Al Horford. Luke Kornet heading to the San Antonio Spurs. If there was a fit that matches him perfectly, it is there in San Antonio. San Antonio right now is a team that can put out a couple of different looks of starting lineups throughout the season. They could change up their lineups and matchup wise depending on what wings, and if they're continuing on keeping the same players that they already have, like Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, and Jeremy Sohan. So great fit for him. He got money that he would not be able to receive here in Boston. And you look over at Al Horford heading over to the Golden State Warriors.
Wait. What? Where'd you hear that?
I saw who posted it. So our guy Finn Sands posted it on Instagram, or what is it? It actually Justin posted it on Instagram about
Justin's a
26
Warriors
minutes
fan,
ago.
so I'm just saying.
Nearing an agreement.
So let's see.
I don't want to be spreading fake news now, but according to Justin,
where is this?
Warriors are nearing
I don't see anything. See anything on Al Horford.
All right.
Well, let's go do some investigative research here live on stream, and let's challenge this. I don't see anything on Al Horford going to the Warriors at this point in time.
All right. NBA Central posted at 2:57. I mean, all right. So this isn't official yet. However, it is a top primary source, and I would assume that Al Horford is out of Boston and will probably receive news of that within the near future. However, according to NBA Central, Al Horford is a top target for the Golden State Warriors per league sources. Uh, the Steinline league sources say veteran center Al Horford it will be a top target for Golden State. Jonathan Kuminga's free agency, by contrast, is expected to be a slow-moving process in Golden State. It does not appear as of lunchtime of Monday that the Warriors or Kuminga's representation had a specific resolution in mind for the 22-year-old forward, 22-year-old forward's immediate future. I always forget that Kuminga's only 22 years old.
I am not a Jonathan Kuminga fan whatsoever. I'm sorry, but he is like a bull in a china shop. He believes he's, in my mind, Kuminga. I think it's the classic behind the scenes. It's like you see some part of the talent out there on the court, and you see some of the athleticism, and people go, "Oh, why isn't Jonathan Kuminga receiving more minutes? Why isn't Steve Kerr more trusting of Jonathan Kuminga? Why doesn't he throw him into the lineup more?" Well, I think it's the classic argument of maturity, right? Or the classic aspect of maturity for any sports player out there. I think Jonathan Kuminga, when he's put into a lineup, right, when he's inserted into an NBA lineup, he seems to believe he should own a lot more responsibilities than what he's actually meant for out there on an NBA court. He doesn't have the mind of a role player, right? He has the mind of somebody who wants to go out there and be a star. And he's in that age range where he just doesn't understand where his actual role is in the NBA yet, and especially alongside guys like Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green now, the Golden State Warriors. And I just think Steve Kerr, it gets to a certain point where you're fed up with the immature attitude and the immature mentality. And we let's face it too, what comes with that is poor execution, right? Poor execution, poor game planning. I shouldn't say poor game planning, but poor execution for the game planning, right? With Jonathan Kuminga, I think that's one of the biggest things holding him back from becoming a more valued player in this league. And it's why right now his free agency makes no sense, because he's a talented player, but the maturity, the mentality, it seems to be a little in question, right? I see there are $1 million athletes. Like you can have a $10 million athlete, right? $10 million body, $10 million physical capabilities, but when you have a 10-cent brain, it's not always going to mesh well together. We've seen quite a few of those guys in the NBA. I do wonder if Jonathan Kuminga is one of those players out there in the NBA, and that's why his free agency is so weird. Is the Warriors sat him down at the end of the season, and the Warriors needed another rotation piece. They needed another forward at the end of the season. Sat down Jonathan Kuminga at the age in which he's at, though, and let's face it, he was playing a bigger role in the Warriors rotation this past season than in years of the past, and yet now Jonathan Kuminga enters restricted free agency, and it's like, are there buyers out there? There are some teams interested in Kuminga for his talent. The Warriors, do they really want him back? It's making this entire process very strange because he's still a very young player, still 22 years old, and he came into the league. Let me see. I want to say it was 2021, if I'm not mistaken. Jonathan Kuminga came into the league all the way back in 2021. Let's see. Yes, first round pick, seventh overall in 2021 to the Golden State Warriors. So that was the Kuminga. I believe they drafted Moses Moody that year as well, and even the year before was James Wiseman. But been in the league for 4 years now, 258 games played with the Warriors, 34 playoff games, and even a title in there with the Warriors in 21-22. 22 years old still, however, he will be 23 by the start of next season, turns 23 in October. But Jonathan Kuminga, I don't know if the Warriors want him back, but their hand might be forced of not wanting to lose that asset. And other teams, I don't know what his actual market value is out there. That being said, this whole conversation started with Al Horford. Al Horford, I'm sorry. There's been no, to me, It's the Warriors are the top target. The Warriors, their top target is Al Horford. It's Al Horford. It's Al Horford. The
which I
Warriors
find
are
very
interested in Al
strange
Horford, but
because
we
Draymond is very
we're
redundant.
not hearing an actual report that says they're nearing an agreement with Al Horford or that Al Horford's going out to Golden State. All we've heard is speculation. Okay, speculation is different than a tangible, credible news report. And that is one of my biggest pet peeves at this time of year is how much speculation is turned into a news report, a rumor. No, 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 no. Speculation. There's been speculation on ESPN so far. There's been speculation on Twitter so far, whether that's NBA Central or other people out there that we know. I'm just saying that it's all speculation at this point in time. I'm not doubting that the Warriors can't go out there and get Al Horford because they're missing a center within their rotation. They might have more money to spend on Al Horford than the Celtics at this given point in time. But I will say the it's not official Al Horford to the Warriors yet.
Yeah. And I would think that's a kind of a redundant signing for the Warriors. You're adding another 35-plus-year-old.
That is exactly what I thought. I was like Draymond, Jimmy Butler, Steph Curry, Al Horford in your starting lineup. I mean, that feels like the 21-22 Lakers with Carmelo Anthony and Dwight Howard and LeBron James and Russell Westbrook. It's like, what is this? What is going on with these above 35-year-old players?
Just trying to retirement tours. That's all you can sum it down, break that down to. But I don't if that is the movement. We kind of knew if you've been tuning into our podcast throughout the off season, we knew that most likely we knew that Luke Kornet was most likely out the door just due to the fact of the money that he was able to demand. I mean, $10 million per year for Luke Kornet, great for him. He got paid and he went to a good situation where he's going to be able to have rotational minutes and also be able to have good production next to a growing star in the league alongside three great guards that are
We have some breaking news.
Say
We
Celtics.
have some breaking news, Franco. Here we go.
Tell me it's Celtics.
It's about the Boston Celtics, all right?
I'll take it.
Per Shams Charania, free agent center Luka Garza has agreed to a 2-year, $5.5 million fully guaranteed deal with the Boston Celtics, sources tell ESPN. So Luka Garza, former Iowa Hawkeye, college star, played with the Minnesota Timberwolves for a couple years, was on the Detroit Pistons as well. Now on his way to the Boston Celtics on a 2-year, $5.5 million deal. So that is a minimum contract for Luka Garza, but the Celtics starting to replenish a little bit of that big man depth.
Yep.
Not a true big man, though, I will say. A little more
He's a
agile, a little combo of a 4 and a big man.
4 or 5. Not the answer, but
certainly not Allen Iverson for the Celtics.
No. Definitely not the answer to the Celtics' problems at big man. However, is a good rotational piece to add. This is kind of the types of additions that you can kind of be looking forward to as this offseason continues to progress. I'm sure that we'll probably have more news as this live comes through. I'm sure that Luka Garza is not the end-all, be-all for the Celtics. However, looking at the Celtics big man depth, it obviously needed to be replenished, and they made the immediate addition. They brought in someone who is on a very minimum contract. I believe he is on. Isn't there different levels to a rookie contract or a?
Well, there's different levels of a minimum based on experience. Like a minimum for a 10+ year vet is going to be different than a minimum for a guy coming off his rookie deal. So this is a $5.5 million minimum contract over the next 2 years. So just doing the math on
that's
that
like
one, he's basically right. He's making the the Jordan Walsh, JD Davidson
Right.
money, basically.
And that's a good player that got minutes in in Minnesota, and it was kind of overshadowed by Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns while he was on the team, and also Julius Randle and Naz Reid. So a player we haven't seen the most out of. I'm sure he's had some production and minutes in the G League over in Minnesota, but I think he's a great addition to what the Celtics are looking for off the bench, and we actually have to get in contact with Justin because when we brought in Matt Ryan, a former Celtic and current, I, I think he's still looking for. I believe he's heading into free agency right now. We'd have to do a little research on it, but former Celtic Matt Ryan, and they were close friends, and it seems like they were a tight knit group. So he has connections to the Boston area, and looking forward to having him play a part of this team. Possible. You look at the depth, and it's kind of you look at the three centers the Celtics have as of now. You have Keita, you got Garza now, who's a little bit more of a stretch big, and you also have Tillman. So that's definitely not what the Celtics are probably going to go into the season with. I expect more adjustments and additions to be made, but yeah, for what the Celtics are able to acquire this offseason, that's the level of player that you're going to be receiving.
And
Well,
I'll say this: Matt Ryan is a free agent right now. But
well,
Griffin, welcome
may I
back.
say, I know I'm gonna be killed. Like I'm supposed to be at this barbecue, but I saw this news break and I have to join it. I am all for Luka Garza to the Boston Celtics. I think, just losing Luke Kornet, bringing in Luka Garza, this is a great deal. This is a young talent that could really be developed into something great. Obviously, like you guys already mentioned, he was overshadowed by Gobert and Naz Reid, but now coming into Boston with a year filled of development, as this is going to be pretty much a bridge year. I like this move for the Boston Celtics. It's a cheap move that you can do, and he's a guy who really could give you a lot. So I'm interested to see what the Celtics can do with Luka Garza. It's obviously not the top deal that we want to see, like being in a Clint Capella or like a obviously this wouldn't have happened, but like a Nas Reed situation. But for the situation, again, like Franco said, that the Boston Celtics are in, this is a guy who I don't know the exact ceiling for Luka Garza, but I know he could develop into a good center. So ultimately, I do like this move for the Celtics. And this is going to be one that we are going to look back on and be like, hey, this was
The
the sneaky.
Celtics got Luca.
I know they got Luca. So this is going to be a sneaky one, though,
Write
that we.
that, write
And
that headline out and post if
I
we
know.
were trying to clickbait.
Well, I'm gonna say this one though. We're gonna come back on this one. We're gonna look back on this one, and this one's gonna be because I will admit I'm high. Obviously, you guys know I'm a big G League guy, but I've heard a lot about Luka Garza and him coming to Boston now. He's young, he's talented. This is a move that I do like for the Boston Celtics. Obviously, it's not the big splash that we wanted, but it will do for now. It will do for now. It gives us a little more center depth at least.
Can he play more minutes than Tillman next year?
Oh,
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
This could be a Tillman replacement. That's what
Uh,
I'm viewing this
yeah,
as.
Well, I don't even know how viable that is because with this free agent signing, Luka Garza is 26 years old, first of all. So he is in that younger prime range, right? The best
Should
years of
be
his
heading
NBA
into it.
career.
Yes, should
Right.
be.
But if you really look at his career, hasn't really done much. Hasn't really done much at all. 5.8 points per game his first year, 6.5 his second year, then 4 points per game, then 3.5 points per game. I understand points per game, not everything out here, but the minutes per game, I'm going to hone in on that. 12.2 minutes per game his rookie season in 32 games played with the Pistons, 8.7 minutes played per game in his second season with the Timberwolves, his first season with the Timberwolves, his second season in the NBA, in 28 games played, plays 25 games his third year in the league on 4.9 minutes per game. And then his last year, right, his fourth year in the NBA, this will be his fifth year coming up here with the Celtics, 39 games played, 5.6 minutes played per game. So in terms of NBA production, really hasn't done much yet. And his minutes have dwindled throughout his 4-year NBA career. That being said, you look at his G League game log, and that is a little bit different. Griffin, you know best of the NBA G League. That's where players can go down. I mean, we were talking about JD Davidson earlier. That's where players can go down there and receive some development and even receive some confidence from teams that they will in fact be somebody in which can contribute to a lineup later on in time. But Luka Garza in the G League only played in 21, 22, and 22, 23, and he averaged 30 he averaged 30 points per game in 6 games in 22, 23 for the Iowa Wolves. And then the year prior, he was playing with the Motor City Cruise, so the Pistons G League squad, right? And he played 16 games there and averaged 20 points per game. So a player that dominated the G League, and he didn't play all that much in the G League, played what? 22 games in the G League, 22 games in the G League. So not a big sample size there either. That's the only thing with Luka Garza is he's a household name for anybody who watched, and there goes Griffin. But he's a household name for anybody who's watched college basketball, and he's a former college basketball star with the Iowa Hawkeyes. I believe he's a Wooden Award winner as well.
Yeah, March Madness poster boy.
Exactly. But in terms of NBA production, really hasn't done anything in my mind. A very small sample size too. I mean, just look at his game log in general. He's only played 124 games in 4 seasons. He's played 12 playoff games, and he's played 22 G League games. So 22 G League games, 12 NBA playoff games, and 124 NBA regular season games by the age of 26. Not a huge sample size on Luka Garza, and he's making the salary of guys in the range so he'll be in the salary range for next season with the Celtics. He'll be in the salary range of Baylor Shireman, Xavier Tillman, Nehemias Queta, JD Davison, or even Jordan Walsh. He'll slot in. He's actually making the most money out of all those guys. He'll be making around we don't know what his actual figure is yet. I'll say that about Luka Garza, but he's going to be making around $2.7 million, $2.6 million. And he's going to be in that Shireman, Tillman, Queta, Davison, Walsh group where can they be frisky members of the rotation? Can they be throw in trade pieces later on down the line? Could they turn into guys like Luke Kornet, right? Luke Kornet, who last season, Luke Kornet was making $2 million, now is making $10 million next season. Can Luka Garza basically be that next Luke Kornet, right? I don't think anybody thought when Luke Kornet entered the Celtics organization back in 2021, he was going to become a player that made $10 million who we're now looking at going, oh man, we lost Luke Kornet on the free agency market. Oh geez, that we didn't think he was going to be that type of player. Luka Garza is very much in that boat too. We don't think he's going to be that type of player where he's going to make $10 million later on in time. He's going to be a part of the rotation. Everything that came with Luke Kornet, we don't project that for Luka Garza, but it's part of the want for the Celtics, right? The game plan, the map for the Celtics is you bring in a 26-year-old player with a small sample size who's been a star in the past in college. And let's face it, when I think of Luka Garza, I think he knows how to play the game of basketball. It's just his physical capabilities within that game of basketball and the quickness, the athleticism of the NBA. He just hasn't been, I want to say he's not fully equipped for the game, but it's possible the Celtics organization equips him a little better for the NBA game, like they did Luke Kornet over the past couple of years, right? Where Luke Kornet, he comes in, he's not somebody you're considering in an NBA rotation because of some of his flaws. Well, the Celtics, they molded him. You think they molded him from a stretch 5 to a traditional big over time, and he even molded himself into that as well. But the Celtics brain trust, right? Like the entire Celtics coaching tree that exists inside the Celtics organization, it's possible they can develop Luka Garza the way they developed Luke Kornet into a legitimate rotation piece in time. It's not a guarantee whatsoever, and it's more likely that that doesn't happen than actually does. Uh, but that is part of the roadmap, and that is the hope for Luka Garza in the future, is that you can bring along some of those. I think he's a high IQ player. It's just the other intangibles within his game, the athleticism, the quickness, some of his skill. Can you bring some of that up to the standard, right, within the workouts? And can you kind of, if you're the Celtics, can you piece together what makes sense for the maximum efficiency of his game, the maximum optimization of Luka Garza's game? So Luka Garza, not a huge name. People will know the name from college basketball, right? When Luka Garza was with the Iowa Hawkeyes, but otherwise in the NBA and NBA circles and people who don't watch college basketball, they're looking at this signing going, who is this
Right.
guy? Who is this guy? And that's unfortunate, but that's how
Yeah,
people are going to look at it.
and how much faith and do you really want to gamble on going into next season with the Tillman, Ada, and Garza being your rotating big man, and if you want to include your second round pick, Amari Williams, into the conversation, which would be completely foreign territory for the Celtics to enter, utilizing their second round pick in a rookie season beyond a rotational stand or beyond a reserve standpoint. But it's concerning for me to look at what this team has put together so far, and it seems like they have really put together the the smaller pieces and are really outlining a foundation. But what this roster is missing is a lot of the veteran presence and the reliability you can you need when you're heading into a season where there's a lot of questions in the air. You need people that are reliable. You need players off of the free agent market that are going to be able to come in and contribute game one and be able to play 15, 20 minutes in a given night and be able to have some progress and production value and be able to help generate wins and be able to fill in for players when they're out, especially when you're missing your star player in Jason Tatum. So this team needed to find spots that are going to almost take the pressure off of the fact that Jason Tatum is out, possibly bringing in an extra wing that is a starting caliber player, a well-rounded player that can play next to Jaylen Brown. And you also need to bring in a center that can alleviate some of the stress on the interior. And Luka Garza, more known for his offensive game, not too much of a defensive stud down low. He's more of a 4 or 5, but at his size, you need to be able to solidify the paint, which he hasn't been able to in his career. And one thing that his minutes show is that he wasn't able to win minutes or actually lost his minutes over time as he played for Detroit, and he also played for Minnesota, which was a star-studded center and front court, so always hard to come by in minutes there. But if that's what you're relying on heading into this next season, there's a lot of area of concern for the Boston Celtics, especially if that is, like I said, he's a great addition for the back end of the bench. I would like to see him if you're trying to reface. This shouldn't be a rebuild year. This is a remodeling year for the Celtics. And if you look at the Luka Garza signing, it's not an upgrade over anything you lost or anything that you already have. It's a conversation where Namias Queta, and Xavier Tillman probably were all three of those players are back end, didn't even get minutes during the playoffs because of the less little impact they have. So it's kind of concerning, but I know there's more moves in store. But for a immediate response and as an answer to losing two of your rotational centers, bringing in Garza is not the thing that's going to separate them from the rest of the pack, or even move them up in any type of standard.
No, and there has to be, in my mind, another move on the horizon somewhere for a center. This center rotation, you just cannot go into the season with. You have Keita, Tillman, and Luca Garza. I'm sorry, that's just not a that's not you that is not a rotation you can walk into the season with and be serious about anything. I'm sorry, you cannot be serious about, oh, there's retooling, we're gonna be competitive or friskier. No, if you walk into a season with Luca Garza, Nehemias Queta, and Xavier Tillman, you are signaling to the entire fan base that this season is a
The
complete
Wizards
wash
walked
and
it
nobody should show up.
right. You can't even sell. That would be you can't
You
even
can't
be
even
taken
sell
serious
people
as
on
the
the
lower
point of
class.
next year. What I'm looking at is, can the Celtics maintain a 4 seed, right? A top 4 seed. Can they be a top 4 seed in the East? It's very plausible given the talent and the teams in the East out there. I'm just saying right now, the teams in the East not very strong next year. No matter what, I mean, I'm sorry, the East, the Celtics, even with the roster they have right now, you think they could be a little. I don't think they're going to be a bottom feeder team next year. But I'm looking for the Celtics. If we're talking about staying competitive, that's being a top 4 seed next season. That's maintaining a top 4 seed next year in the East. And if you go into the season with a big man rotation of Luca Garza, Xavier Tillman, and Nehemias Queta, you can't. In my mind, you're not serious about that. You're not serious. If you're adding on a center to this mix, right? A legitimate starting center, right? And I don't even know if that's Al Horford, right? If you welcome Al
No,
Horford back into the mix, he's 39 years old. He's 39. Okay, he's 39 years
you'd be
old.
relying on
He
him to play
shouldn't.
25, 30 minutes a game when
Right.
he
Last
should be
season, we're
at the back
thinking
end of
he
your
should be
bench.
playing around the 20-minute mark. And now what? We're going to have him as he's going to be our starting center playing upwards of 30 minutes a night at 39 years old. And we're talking about, this is what I'm talking about with Al Horford. It makes no sense. Like, oh, teams are ramping up to get him, and the Warriors and it, last season we're keeping him on ice. The season before him, we're going, oh, I don't know. 2 seasons ago. Now I will say Al Horford has always outgrown his value to a higher value, right? In 2019, did not expect the contract he got that offseason he received from the Philadelphia 76ers when he left the Celtics the first time. And even before that, the Celtics gave him a max deal back in the summer of 2016, and people were looking at him at age 30 at that point in 2016, nearly 10 years ago, saying, ooh, is that Al Horford deal 4 years from now going to look all right? Well, 4 years later, Al Horford, 3 years later, I should say, basically received the same deal from the Sixers 3 years after that deal. And then further on into the future, of course, we all know the history with Al Horford and his impact on last year's finals team and the 2022 finals team and even last year's team during various moments. But Al Horford, we're putting him on ice. We're questioning 2 years ago if he's going to be in for the long run, the next two playoff runs. And thankfully he was. He was. But even in that Knicks series, it looked a little rough. I'm just saying the Knicks, their center rotation, Towns, Mitchell Robinson, they just looked way more athletic than Luke Kornet and Al Horford. Way more active, way more energetic. And I'll say Al Horford, even if you bring him back, is that enough? Is that enough? You can't sell people on the center rotation right now. If the center rotation is how it is, you can't sell people next season that you're serious about winning right now if you're the Celtics. So another move has to be on the way when it comes to the Celtics centers. Are we going to add Griffin in here? Griffin, you ready to go? Yeah,
His
yeah,
family,
okay.
his
Well,
family is gonna kill him.
we got to
They're
I tell
Go,
you,
I had to get the thumbs up from Griffin. Here we
I,
go.
Get the,
He's
get,
he's
get
in
the
an
example.
automobile, folks.
I am at a barbecue right now, but like,
Yeah, spend time with your family, man.
no. The thing is, free agency right now is
That's gonna be a
It's
good
too.
clip.
Luka Garza.
I don't care. I'm a fan of Luca Garza. Listen, you guys need to turn the corner. I'm not mad about Luca Garza because think about it. Would you guys rather Luca Garza than Xavier Tillman being our starter center? This starter.
Look, I would. Okay, I'm sorry. I
I
would
mean,
want neither of them being our starting center,
No,
but
yeah,
I agree, but Luka Garza. Listen, I'm gonna say this for the Boston Celtics. This year is totally an experimental year for the Celtics because you have to think Jason Tatum is not going to be back till next year. So this year you need to figure out what you can do, figure out who you're going to let off, and think about that because the Boston Celtics are trying to make this team a championship competitive team when Jason Tatum does come back to the team. And no, listen though. Garza, this gives you a year to test out Garza. If he does not work for the Celtics, next year you can go in a different route. But this year is a very experimental year for the Boston Celtics. And Luka Garza, I feel like can be a good experiment. In a year where it's going to be a bridge year, why not see what Luka Garza's ceiling is in the NBA?
well,
may,
can I just
may I?
outline this Luca
May,
Garza deal is not as big of a deal as we think.
right?
It's
No,
he's making
no.
basically two
It's a
point five
minimal.
million, two and a
It's a
half million
minimum
dollars a
deal.
deal.
Yeah, so if it does,
He's
if
making
it
two and a
doesn't,
half million dollars per year. I
and
mean,
this
this is not going to be a.
and
End of
this
He's
deal.
going to be
but,
down in the
but
rotation. I see a
totally,
13th,
but this
14th,
is
15th man.
this is a deal. Yeah, I agree. And this is a deal where, I feel as of right now, Nemias Queta gets that starting spot as of right now. But
Oh my
as of
god.
right now,
What are
All
we
right.
doing?
All
I'm
right.
sorry,
yeah,
that's just not
as of
happening. That's just
but
not
but
happening.
you look at this deal, all right? You look at this deal. Yeah, he could be if he's a 15th man, that's the best case scenario. I want him to be lower in that role in Boston because that means that we could get in someone better for the
No,
center
because
position.
that means he's going to Maine, and you get to interview him
No,
outside the expo.
no. But I don't
That's
think
what
he
that
goes back to
means.
the G League. I don't think he goes back to the G League. However, though, I look at it like this: if he is not what you wanted, you could flip him at trade deadline. So, but I do think I hope best case scenario he is lower in the Celtics rotation because that just means we have a bigger piece that can be a starter for the Celtics. So fingers crossed we get a big splash that we could have a center. Because as of right now, I feel like as of right now, Nemias Queta or Xavier Tillman is our starting center, and I am not a fan of that.
That is not I'm sorry, that's not
Then,
happening.
then
That's
who's
Right,
the
just not.
as of right
That's
but
not even a
right
tangible
now,
plan.
right now they're going over
who
the
is the starting
Celtics
center?
on the
What?
right now they're going over the Celtics on ESPN.
Here,
All
Franco,
right. Well,
mind that information. Franco, listen to that information for us and report back here. I don't have
yeah.
that broadcast on,
You know
but
what?
I
I'm
do have
too
a
far
piece.
away. I'll be back.
Okay, we
All right.
do have a.
Well,
Well,
Enjoy the view
Franco's
of
going
TD
on a
Garden.
little.
No, thank you for the media passes.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
well,
Thank you to the garden there. But
well
Franco going on an investigative report mission for us right now. However, I
who
want to
is
give out this piece of news because this came across these two pieces of news here. Per Sham Sharani, a free agent guard Tyus Jones has agreed to a 1-year, $7 million deal with the Orlando Magic. So the Orlando Magic pick up another ball handler. That was part of their problem last season. The playmaking, the ball handling, not all there for the Magic. We saw that in the Magic Celtics playoff series. Now the Magic pick up one of the better ball handling guards in the league or better playmakers in the league in Ty Jerome. And when I say better playmakers, it's because of his assist to turnover ratio. He doesn't turn the ball over. Tyus Jones, very notorious for never turning the ball over. Now he was thought of, I will say, Tyus Jones was thought of as a resolution for the whole Phoenix fiasco with Bradley Beal and Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. It was thought of. Tyus Jones was thought of as a piece last year. The Suns added on to the trio of players who were all individual scorers, right? Beal, Booker, Durant, but maybe not all. They're not. Their first instincts weren't to be playmakers, right? Devin Booker, probably the best playmaker out of the three, but those three players, they're all isolation scorers. Tyus Jones was supposed to come into Phoenix last year and break up that a little bit, right? Make the offense run a little bit more
Yeah.
steady with his presence as the point guard. Now, that didn't happen last year with the Suns, as we saw. I mean, in the two games we covered, Griffin, when the Celtics were out in Phoenix and Phoenix came to Boston, the Suns, it didn't exactly look like that was happening for the Suns, but you can't blame that all on Tyus Jones. I mean, it was a lot of the mentalities and the personalities in the organization, the setup of the team, let's face it. But now
Yeah.
Tyus Jones heads to Orlando with the same purpose to propel that offense with another ball handler, another playmaker within that offense. So Tyus Jones heads to the Magic. But Griffin,
Well,
we do have
Tyus.
another. Yeah, go in on Tyus Jones because we do have another piece of news coming out here as well.
Well, what's the news? What's the news, real quick?
Well, this is another piece of news that actually came out before the Tyus Jones, and this one we can get into maybe a little bit more. Per Shams Charania, free agent Nickeil Alexander Walker has agreed to a 4-year, $62 million deal with the Atlanta Hawks, plus a player option and a trade kicker, sources tell ESPN. And that will be a sign and trade deal between the Hawks and the Wolves. And the Atlanta Hawks,
Well,
as I
that's
keep, Atlanta is sending a 2027 second round pick via Cleveland and cash to the Minnesota Timberwolves to acquire Nickeil Alexander Walker. So a sign and trade between the Hawks and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Nickeil Alexander Walker heading to Atlanta, and Trae Young, a big piece in trying to. Trae Young was a big factor in getting Nickeil Alexander Walker to the Atlanta Hawks. So
well,
we
well,
knew with
yeah.
the Timberwolves re-signing Julius Randle. Julius Randle opts out of his $30.9 million player option, re-signs for the next 3 years under under a $100 million deal. And then and we've been mentioning it on here, Griffin, you primarily, with Naz Reid receiving a $125 million deal worth 5 years, or rather a 5-year, $125 million deal with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So the Timberwolves re-ink Naz Reid and Julius Randle. However, it comes at the cost of Nickeil Alexander Walker, who is now an Atlanta Hawk.
Well, that's
Yeah.
what I wanted to mention. Is I was gonna say that with the whole Tyus Jones statement is the East now, obviously with Boston kind of taking a back seat, this year, retooling for when Jason Tatum comes back, is wide open. And teams like the Magic and the Hawks now are looking to capitalize. I looking at the Hawks now, if Porzingis can stay healthy and Nickeil Alexander Walker now being added to the team, this could be a team where you look at and you're like, wow, they could maybe potentially push a little run this season. But ultimately, with that whole thing, it's like it's a head scratcher for Minnesota now losing Nickeil Alexander Walker and Luka Garza. Obviously, Luka Garza not being a big member in the Minnesota Timberwolves team, roster there. But Nickeil Alexander Walker is a big, valuable piece that the Timberwolves had. Now losing him kind of makes it, are the Timberwolves going to be a contender next year? Are they going to be? No, obviously they still will, but that's a bigger piece to lose than a lot of people will see. I feel like Nickeil Alexander Walker was a very good piece on that Timberwolves team. So they're going to have to make someone in addition to losing him. They're going to have to get someone off the market or do a trade to acquire
Well,
someone.
not off the market or trade. They're going to have to develop Rob Dillingham. That's
Yeah,
what they're going to have to
so
do
that's
here.
what they're doing. They're gonna have to develop him. Yeah, and do you think he could totally take the shoes over of Nickeil Alexander Walker?
Well,
Do
that's
you?
the plan. When you trade up to number 8 in the draft to go get
Yeah,
Rob Dillingham in 2024, the way the Timberwolves did, just coming off the Western Conference Finals run, they committed back in 2024. When you trade for Rob Dillingham at number 8, and you see, oh, Nickeil Alexander Walker, he's on an expiring deal, he's going to be a free agent that the Timberwolves very much knew. Julius Randle, Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander Walker, their free agency was coming up in the summer of 2025. And here we are, right, in the summer of 2025. And they knew that last offseason. They knew it when they traded away Karl Anthony Towns for Julius Randle. And when they moved up to go get Rob Dillingham. They gave up a pretty nice pick to go up and get him at number 8 last year.
Yeah.
And when you do that, if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves, you 100% expect in time, you're noticing, oh, we're going to have to pick between Randall and Naz Reid. When they traded for Randall, of course, we're going to have to pick between Randall, Naz Reid, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They probably thought Randall might be an odd man out in all of that, but Randall, he's re-signed. Naz Reid, he's re-signed. Those are likely two. They're the two more important positions because you look at Nickeil Alexander-Walker, there are other players there who can take his spot. I mean, Anthony Edwards, Anthony Edwards is your top guard, first of all, but and you're not talking about replacing him with Anthony Edwards, but Dante DiVincenzo's there. You have Rob Dillingham, who you picked 8th overall last year. Mike Conley's there. So their guard rotation is a little more it's a little more robust than their big man rotation.
Yeah. Well,
So
I do have to say this though. I do have to say this. Obviously, I feel like as of right now, that was a big loss. But Seamus, you said it. Rob Dillingham, correct development. He could, surpass even Nickeil Alexander Walker. His ceiling is pretty high. So I'm a big fan of Rob Dillingham. But one thing I do have to say, am I still echoing, Seamus?
definitely, but
Okay. Well, we'll take a little time out from me really quick since I'm echoing. Let's.
well, no, you're good when you talk. It's when I talk, or it's when
Oh,
anybody else
gotcha.
talks. So it's our voices coming through your microphone.
All right.
So you're
Well,
good.
so I'll go. As I was saying though, with the whole Tice Jones and obviously Nickeil Alexander Walker to the Hawks, those are two teams now that could make a good playoff run like this year in the NBA, especially again with the Celtics kind of going to be taking a seat back without Jason Tatum. They obviously can make a good run, and especially now the Hawks, well, especially the Magic, but with the Hawks, if Porzingis is healthy and you add in Nickeil Alexander Walker, they could be a team that it's going to be a tough one to beat with Trae Young as well. But for the Magic, you look at their team and, adding Desmond Bane, now Tice Jones, they look like a team where they could be a contender in the East. But Franco, what are you hearing from ESPN on the Celtics? Oh, I think you're muted.
A whole lot of nada. It's all the same rumors and speculation that you're hearing. They went over a few the fact that Luke Kornet left and also what the starting lineup looks like next year. And I one narrative I hope gets killed is the one that this team is retooling for when Jason Tatum comes back. It I hate to break everyone's
But
heart, but we're
but
not on
aren't we doing
2K.
that basically?
We are, but we're not.
We are, but it's not
But
like we're on NBA 2K25 and we can just sim through next season until Jason Tatum returns healthy. There are still 82 games in a season ahead of you, and there is no such thing if you are the Boston Celtics as taking a year off.
no,
That it's not like you can't just not show up to these games. You need to have a product If you're looking at this as a business, you need to have a product to be able to put on the court, be able to sell those tickets, be able to sell that revenue, be able to sell those nationally televised games. If the Celtics are dropping below 10 nationally televised games next season, that is a huge problem of concern for the Boston Celtics because they are one of the biggest markets in sports. They need to be able to put out something that can be viewed and can be speculated upon, can be viewed as a contender, can be not seen as a washover season because it's not like the season's going to disappear. If you're looking at this roster next year and you're looking at a roster with Namias Keita, even entertaining the idea of Namias Keita, Xavier Tillman, and Luka Garza and Amari Williams as your big man depth is not something that you can sell to anyone. You'd have to sell tickets in TD Garden for less than $75 a pop, which anyone who is in power in Boston and the Jacobs family who leases out TD Garden to the Boston Celtics would rather roll over dead than have ticket sales go down that drastically.
Well, can I say too to your take, Franco, is I agree. It's gonna be a lot more dreading like this. You're looking at it. This retool season is gonna be super dreading for the Boston
You
Celtics, and
can't look at it that way, though. You need to be able to put in a.
you need to have a team that will at least go out there and compete. And I feel like Brad needs to do something here and go out and compete because and you're looking at all the rumors with Anthony Simons potentially being what's it called? What's the word I'm looking for?
Relocated.
Relocated. Sorry, I couldn't think about it. But you look at Anthony Simons potentially being relocated, and that's a guy that Celtics fans are going to be very high on and really expect a lot from next season. And if you're going to go out and give him out for, another Georges Niang type player, I'm not for that. The Boston Celtics,
If they gave us
I'm
three
not,
of them, I would be fine with
a
it.
lot of people, what was that?
If they gave us three of them, I would be fine with it. Three
But
Georges Niang type players. We
yeah,
need. That's what we need.
but
We need to just fill this roster with players that aren't viewed as valuable anymore because we've seen the Celtics be known for revitalizing careers and bringing careers back into revival. Like,
definitely,
and
definitely.
that's the main. I don't know if I said this on stream at some point, but I was talking to Seamus. I was saying about this free agency market is the Celtics have this selling appeal of it being the Boston Celtics. You sign a minimum contract here, you are guaranteed rotational, if not a starting position on a Boston Celtics roster. And we've seen many examples of Celtics players coming into Boston or players coming into Boston not at a high value or viewed at a high value and leaving and receiving contracts that the
Like,
Celtics could
like
not
Luke
pay.
Kornet,
Like perfect example is Luke Kornet
Kornet,
that just happened.
and
So you need to like a player like the players like DeAndre Ayton, who is now on the market. If he's willing to take on a minimum contract, those are the types of players. A Marvin Bagley,
yes,
dare
yes.
I even say a Ben Simmons type of player. You're
It,
looking at these minimum contract deals and strongly considering it because you're looking at these guys and they have a chance if you're retooling. These guys could potentially play rotational pieces when this team becomes a pure contender
and,
in in 2026 and 2027. But you need to put together a roster that you would feel confident going into a round one battle with any team in the East and being like, there's a chance that we can outlast these guys in 7 games.
to-
And
totally.
the East, like we said, the East is a open war zone, and there's not really a front runner. You look at even the Indiana Pacers, the team who won the Eastern Conference Finals. They're without Tyrese Halliburton going into next year, so it's a complete open war zone. If the Celtics are taking a step down now, they're picking the worst time to do so.
Well, I'm gonna say this too, though. I agree. I feel like you look back and you even look back and see, say we had the whole team that we had just without Jason Tatum. The East right now without Tyrese too. The Celtics could totally make a playoff run with that East without Jason Tatum. However, you shipped out Porzingis, Luke Kornet signed with the Spurs, and Drew Holiday is now with the Trailblazers. I like the piece that we got in Anthony Simons, but this is what I'm gonna say. This Celtics team is comparing to when Tristan Thompson and Evan Fournier and Kemba
I'd be
Walker
happy with
Robinson.
those types of players
But
coming here.
I would too. But we're not even having those types of players. Like right
Not
now,
yet. I feel
not
like
yet. I feel like there's still time to come where Celtics are gonna make a splash. It's so early, and that's
it's
why
going to be
I'm
the
not
second
letting
window of free agency.
yeah, and that's why I'm not letting my frustration take over because I'm like, all right, We need to give it time. We, as Celtics fans too, we need to let it go. We need to ride it out a little longer because Brad Stevens isn't just gonna like again. I'm stealing this quote from Coach AJ. Brad Stevens is not just gonna let the Celtics franchise just drop and be like the Red Sox. Brad is like 3 steps ahead of us right now. Brad is already thinking in the future. He already has 3 steps in mind. And you look at that with Luka Garza, that might have been one of the steps, All right, this is
No,
a
that's
guy that could
pennies on the dime.
eventually be a bench piece on the Celtics because you don't know. That could be a guy that you look at and could turn into like a Evan Fournier type player, obviously completely different, but one of those pieces on a team. So I just look at this though, and obviously it's disappointing right now, but ultimately I feel like we're gonna get those pieces. And you looked at it, that Tristan Thompson and Evan Fournier Celtics team, they developed into winning a championship. That's what stage they were at then. That's the stage we're at right now. We obviously work on developing the team, constructing a roster that can compete for a championship. And once Jason Tatum is back, that's what we need to do.
And I want to say this. A Wolves reporter just came out and said the Celtics, they have long been fans of Luka Garza. The Celtics made inquiries with the Wolves before, and that comes out from John Krasinski of the he's a Timberwolves reporter, so credible source there. The Celtics have long been fans of Luka Garza. Just want to throw that one out there. More speculation. Brian Robb says you'd have to wonder if the Nuggets are going to make a run at Al Horford now. We'll see. DeAndre Jordan, a free agent there.
I think Al Horford has
I would mid-level exception the Nuggets have to use. Man, they would be killing the offseason if they signed Al Horford here.
And you were saying earlier that you were saying what value does Al Horford still have, and you brought up that and saying what teams would still be interested in Al Horford, and I would say almost every single upper echelon team should be interested in Al Horford. It's just what are they expecting out of Al Horford? Are they if they're expecting 25, 20 minutes out of Al Horford like the Celtics received out of him even this season, they're not going to receive it on that level. They need to be looking to add him on a cheaper deal and almost using him as a rotational piece at the middle of your bench to help you secure a championship. So I think teams like we've heard reports, the Warriors and the Nuggets are
The Nuggets and the Knicks so far have been pure speculation. There have been no
right.
There have been no there have been no rumors with actual substance when it comes to the Nuggets and the Knicks. It's been all speculation. The only rumor has been with the Warriors so far.
I would say there's
and the Celtics. Let's face it,
or 2 teams. I would say there's up to 10 teams that would probably be interested in Al Horford.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say this, and then after this take again. Sorry, I know I've been in and out. If there's any big breaking news, though, you guys trust and believe I will be running back to my car.
But you lost your sunlight.
Yeah, I was about to say
everyone's gonna be going home.
No, I'll trust me. I'll have the cop light in here with the cop car. I'll have the red light on.
Jeez.
Don't you guys worry. No, but
I brought the party guys.
I know we have.
We brought the car with the party lights.
Whoa, that is not better lighting. That's a little aggressive.
I think it was. I feel like it was.
Oh
yeah.
Oh
wow. Yeah.
That was some golden hour.
Well, if you guys want to, I don't know if I could, but we got the cop car right here, so we have the cop light.
Oh my god!
It's just a spotlight.
You drive.
This is right, Griffin. The personal story of Griffin, former cop car. Griffin drives around.
If I could turn,
that's intimidating.
Yeah, we got the cop light right here, as you guys see. But
why does it shine in the car?
Well, because it's turned towards me. I like to go more of a cop feel. So, like, the cops, they turn it towards them when they're driving and stuff. If I had it out, I would be like, oh, I'm an amateur. No,
What cop is shining the light in his own face while he's chasing after.
No cop is doing that, but they keep it like this. They're not just gonna ride out with
Pull
it.
Pull over.
Yeah, well, that's why you have this little knob on here too that you could like spin it. You could spin it. So
whoa. Can we see? Let's see the example of this.
you could spin
Spin it around. Oh, very easily. I see. So you're saying when they pull somebody over, they spin it around and
spin it around.
they beam it at somebody.
Yeah, so that's when you get the light. You guys know it's not Griffin without him shining his cop light into his eye. But ultimately, this with the whole Al Horford thing, as I got sidetracked with my cop light. The great lighting right here, as it's just burning my eyes, guys. It's burning my eyes. But
do it for the Vine. That's what they used to say. Now it's for the YouTube.
That might be a clip, of Griffin just with his eyes burning.
No, I the whole time we're doing this, I'm like, it's gonna be a clip.
This might be
here
a
comes
clip.
the short.
Griffin burning his eyes. No, but ultimately this with Al Horford though. I look at this, and this is a player where obviously a championship would be great for Al. And I think that's what he wants. He wants to finish his career with a chip. Obviously, as he originally started with the Hawks and bounced around the league, ultimately having a lot of time with Boston. And I think Boston is truly where his heart is. But a championship is also nice. However, the question is he going to take the veteran minimum from the Celtics? Because you look at this, he could do one thing where Red Auerbach stressed. He loved letting his Celtics retire a Celtic. And I look at Al Horford and I look at his career. Yeah, he had a lot of time with Atlanta. Yeah, there was that. You could go with the Sixers days, which I don't think I will. The Thunder days, I wouldn't really talk about that. But you look back, I think
for him.
What was that?
A return to actually that probably ruins his chances of winning a championship. But he would get minutes in Philadelphia again.
Yeah, but you look at this. I think ultimately it comes down to this. It's going to come down to, for one, you got to look at money. He's on the cusp of retiring, and you look at money, and you're going to look at this, and you're going to be like, all right, well, this could help his kids and his kids, someday. But you also look at this side too. It's like, will he want to will he want to finish off his career in Boston rather than, signing that 1-day contract where it's like, oh yeah, you just signed that? Would he rather, end his career in Boston, or would it, he has three options. Either, you provide money for your kids, you get that big contract, the end of your career, or you're not getting much. I know you're not getting much, but go for a championship or finish your career with the Celtics.
So
there's three options.
Can I lead off, Seamus?
Go ahead.
I don't think a return to Boston is beneficial for either side. I can see the loyalty. We can play that card, but I think that it's just mainly him getting the championship, and also what can he contribute for Boston now? If you're going into next season, you bring back Al Horford next year, you're relying on him to be your starting center amongst the centers that you already have. Are you going to be looking for Al Horford to be playing 25, 30 minutes per game for 82 games during a regular season? And if that team is even capable of making a playoff run, which with Al Horford as your starting center, you will have to take into account the nights that he's going to need to rest. You need to take into account all that. And with those pieces behind him, I just don't see it being beneficial for either side, a reunion. And I wish him, there are plenty of teams that are much more suitable to bring in Al Horford, and hopefully he goes to a team that there's a situation where he's not being relied on too heavy, and he still has a strong chance of winning a championship, and he can also produce for that championship team on the bench.
Can I say this before I leave too? I look at this. I agree. both sides coming back to Boston, it's rough. But I look at it from a leadership perspective too, and a development perspective. This is a guy that you could, if you do end up bringing him back, he's going to teach the younger guys. Obviously, I feel like he's put a lot of footprints on the Miaskata and Xavier Tillman, giving them, kind of passing the torch essentially. But this is another way, especially now just signing Luka Garza, where he could kind of give them more of a mentor and kind of, because this is Al Horford's the type of guy I look at, and I don't know, but he could potentially be a coach someday. I don't know what are the chances of that, but he's a guy who
There's a better chance of him becoming a model and a
I
actor.
I agree. Yeah, I think he'll be a model.
Those
Going
who
back.
know, who
He's
know.
almost Brady level of man. How much time? Like, will he ever spend time with his family?
I
That is
uh,
the Al Horford. I'm just saying.
I'm
Will
no,
he
I
ever
mean
spend
his
time with
kids
his family?
spend enough time. His kids are now I forget his son's name, but he's actually the ball boy for the Boston Celtics. You see him not. He's sitting on the bench with the team and carrying out duties. And Joe Mazzulla knowing Joe Mazzulla, he probably has responsibilities that kid needs to fulfill. So he probably has an active job with the Boston Celtics. So they
well,
spent enough time together, and we also know how involved Horford's family is with being a fan of Al Horford and his awareness
yeah,
within
I
the
do have. Yeah,
they are very aware of the Celtics community.
yeah, I do have to go, but it's gonna be interesting to see where he goes. But I'll see you guys if
We
any.
wait. Let's flash this up here as Griffin exits the stage. This is from ESPN on the broadcast, and I gotta say
That's what I saw. Yeah,
it's a little misleading in my opinion. It's a little misleading. So
they don't know about Namias Queta.
yeah, right. They're not putting Kata in there. They're not putting Luka Garza. They're not putting our guy Amari Williams in there. Although I suspect Amari Williams will be a two-way player for the Celtics. However, little misleading right now. You have Anthony Simons replacing Drew Holiday, then Derek White for Derek White, Jalen Brown for Jalen Brown. But then you have Georges Niang for Jason
Right now,
Tatum and Xavier Tillman for Kristaps
right now,
Porzingis.
I would honestly run if the season started today. I would be running Niang at center and running incredibly small ball. And running Niang at center and having Hauser move up to the starting lineup.
But this is where you come to the conclusion the offseason is nowhere near done.
Right.
And for them to present this right now, I hope they added on the words at the end. The Celtics aren't finished because this lineup is absolutely, utterly ridiculous. This starting lineup right here, if you have Xavier Tillman, it would have looked nice maybe last year if you were suggesting, hey, Xavier Tillman, maybe he's that player. But we just saw a full season's worth of data where Xavier Tillman never played within the starting lineup. And this is somewhat truthful of who the Celtics have slotting into. I wouldn't say this would be their exact starting lineup opening night, but these are some of their top players now compared to last year. But I would say the Celtics offseason isn't quite done because the big man rotation is the big glaring hole here. Everywhere else, the guard rotation, the full rotation, not bad for the Celtics, but the center rotation, whew, that's pretty rough. But yeah, Kata, I would say Kata definitely gets the start over Xavier Tillman. However, I do want to get to a couple more news items here as more news continues to come
Do,
across the screen.
do
Number
we want
one,
to? Oh, yeah, we'll cover the
well,
news.
I'll get into this. Luke Kennard, 1 year, $11 million to the Hawks. So let's get that out of the way. Nikhil
Oh
Alexander
man,
Walker, $62 million over, I believe it was a 4 year deal
so the Hawks
for.
have some depth now too. That
No, the Hawks are looking pretty good in the East next year. All of a
right?
sudden, they're looking pretty good. Now they did lose Karis LeVert to the Detroit Pistons, but I wouldn't say Karis LeVert was a
That
massive. They got
they
him for DeAndre Hunter. They acquired
I
Mann
feel
and
like Luke
Niang
Kennard is
and LeVert for Hunter,
yeah,
and then swapped Niang for Porzingis. That's a pretty good asset
yeah,
build right there.
yeah.
Also,
They'll definitely
there we go.
be a contending team. Luke Kennard definitely a easy replacement for Karis LeVert. And yep, I would
And
consider
no Capella
them. eh,
as here.
Yeah,
Let's give
Clint
credit
Capella is
where
on the
credit is
Rockets
due.
now. The the Houston Rockets. I mean, Dorian Finney-Smith, Clint Capella, Kevin
Kevin
Durant.
Durant for Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks and
I
Malawatch,
mean,
essentially. Malawatch, just trading Kevin Durant, trading Malawatch for Kevin Durant. I mean, I know they didn't trade Malawatch necessarily. They could have gone with somebody else there at number 10, but that was that 10th pick for Kevin Durant. Otherwise, the Rockets offseason, the two winners I would pinpoint of the three winners right now of the offseason, okay? The three winners so far: the Atlanta Hawks, the Houston Rockets, and the Denver Nuggets. Those are the three winners so far on the first day of free agency of the entire offseason. You could say, other teams like, the Dallas Mavericks, right? Cooper Flag, the Spurs
we
with
knew
Dylan Harper.
they
We
won.
knew about them.
We knew they won when the lottery happened, but the losers headlining it are the Boston Celtics.
Well,
I
I'm
mean,
not
for the
convinced of that
situation that
entirely
they're in right
yet.
now. Yeah,
Up to this point in time, we've definitely we have detonated. Brad Stevens has detonated the roster. Okay, and what's odd about this is the first move. The first official move of the offseason, right, was the Drew Holiday trade, and that first night we're going, man, we did it again. Wow, Drew Holiday for Anthony Simons, 26-year-old, and we're gonna. What is going on here? And then the Niang trade comes across the ticker, right? The Kristaps Porzingis trade comes across the ticker. That one is purely for salary shedding purposes. You're getting a worse player for a better player. Yet the Celtics cut nearly $20 million off their salary. It was about $22 million off their salary number. And between the Holiday and Porzingis moves, the Celtics luxury tax bill. So not talking about the salaries on the Celtics sheet or anything like that. It has nothing to do with the first, second apron, nothing. But the luxury tax bill, right? The Celtics are in the luxury tax still at this moment in time. Just saying, watch out. The Celtics could cut more salary to get under that luxury tax line later on in the season. They had until the trade deadline to get to that to get below that number. However, the luxury tax line, the Celtics were way over with Porzingis and Holiday. But with those two moves alleviating the salary in which the Celtics did, the luxury tax bill, the Celtics saved nearly $180 million off their luxury tax bill for next season with the Holiday and Porzingis moves. So the Celtics huge cost cutting moves with Holiday and Porzingis. There could be more on the way, and that was the point of those trades. But you didn't get better in those trades for the Celtics. Maybe the first one you say, okay, well, the Celtics, they got Anthony Simons, 26-year-old, could become something later on in time, could flip him. He's expiring. You get off future money with Holiday. And Holiday was regressing. Meanwhile, Anthony Simons could have another level to go up to. That's the difference between those two players. So you're saying, okay, the Celtics may have won that first trade. The Niang trade was not a win for the Celtics outside of the alleviation of salary plus the ability for the Celtics to use the mid-level exception in the future, which could ink Al Horford. If the Celtics do in fact ink Al Horford, that's what I also want to mention with Al Horford. If the Celtics ink Al Horford to the mid-level exception, we can look back to the Porzingis deal and go, thank you to the Porzingis deal for that, because Al Horford, I don't think he's going to ink a minimum anywhere. I believe Al Horford, he's in the market range of the mid-level exception, at least the taxpayer mid-level exception, which is around $5 million. The full non-taxpayer mid-level exception would be upwards of $14 million. Not certain Al Horford is at that height, but the taxpayer mid-level, certainly that $5 million range. I don't think he's going to take a minimum. I think he's going to be at that mid-level
right.
exception. But the Celtics, in that Niang Porzingis move, the Celtics, they removed the implications of the second apron away from themselves. So it's not just a salary thing. I mean, the second apron went through all of the implications last week and everything with the second apron, but the two biggest ones were you cannot aggregate salary in a trade. You cannot take back 25% more than the salary in which you originally send out. So the 100%, you can't return 125% of salary for the 100% of salary you send out. And furthermore, you can't use the mid-level exception. You can't use trade exceptions. Your first round pick is frozen. All that good nonsense. Yeah, it can't send out cash in trades like we just saw the Atlanta Hawks send out cash to the Minnesota Timberwolves with that Nickeil Alexander Walker sign-in trade. So the Celtics with that Porzingis deal, they eradicate all the implications of the second apron. And that was the big value within that deal. But from a player's perspective, didn't really get much from that deal. You could potentially, again, if the Celtics re-sign Al Horford, could look back to that deal and go, oh, well, that's how the Celtics were able to re-sign Al Horford with the mid-level exception. But now you sign Luka Garza, you see Luke Kornet walk, and you're essentially, in some people's minds, they're saying, oh, Luke Kornet, he walks. We're basically replacing him with Luka Garza, a way, way lesser version. I mean, I wouldn't even say Luke Kornet and Luka Garza aren't particularly close to my mind. Maybe you're talking about a couple of years ago with Luke Kornet, but this offseason, I almost feel like we're
Xavier
just getting
Tillman
started.
replacement
I feel like
more
we've
than
we've
anything
seen
else.
a good amount of moves. We could be halfway through per se, but there's got
Yeah.
to be a little bit more here for the roster,
Oh,
just from a big man perspective. But it's about maintaining flexibility, financial flexibility into the future, and asset flexibility for the Celtics, and that's so far that's what the Celtics have been able to attain this summer. And the roster doesn't look amazing, but again, I'll go back on the point of it's about asset accumulation. It's not necessarily about putting together a roster that can compete next season. The only thing is now we need to see the Celtics kind of middle both worlds, right? We need to see them kind of middle the world of selling the fan base on, oh, we can maybe make a tiny run next year. Maybe we're not contenders, but we can be frisky, we can be
just make
fun.
it
And they
around
need to
one.
straddle the line of also being able to sell some of these guys and maintain flexibility in the future. I mean, that's where the Celtics are right now. And we're just seeing the process of that play out, and it seems very slow. And what's odd about this is I feel like this is how the Celtics have operated in the past, even under Danny Ainge's leadership in the front office and the Ainge family, right? Austin Ainge as well. All, the Celtics have operated like this in the past, and it's all a patient waiting game that people absolutely hate. But as you see in 2024, people love the outcome in the title, right? They love the outcome in the rings, the banners, the everything, right? People love the outcome of what these moments can lead to in the end. It's just very painstakingly slow these moments can roll by, and the patience in which the team has to maintain. And it's basically like gathering up all your assets, right? You're sitting in the bush, you're waiting, you're gathering up all your assets. You're okay, we're waiting to attack, right? That's where the Celtics are. They're kind of they're going back into the bush. They're pulling back their troops, right? They're rearranging the entire army to go make that push in battle yet again. That's where the Celtics are. They're last like this offseason, they're basically pulling back from the front lines, regathering themselves to then re-engage the front lines. And right now we're in the
How far
regathering
back?
stage, and people absolutely hate that stage because it doesn't involve, oh, we're adding these championship pieces and we're making these crazy awesome moves for this X star and this Y player, and people hate it because it's things like this. It's, oh, we signed Luca Garza and we got rid of Luke Kornet. We didn't get rid of Luke Kornet. We didn't re-sign Luke Kornet. And now we're trying to re-sign Al Horford. That seems like an impossible. I shouldn't say it's an impossible task, but people are making it seem like an impossible task for the Celtics. So
Or is it
that's
the
where it
most
is. And then the
feasible? It's
salary
like,
shedding as well, right? All of
yeah.
that. That's
And realistically, how far back do you want to retract? And when you're going back into the bush, it doesn't mean that the world isn't still spinning around you. You need to still have a like I keep on saying, a competitive talent, because while you're down, people are gonna kick you. If you're the Celtics and you're looking at next year as a year of just, oh, you just wait until Jason Tatum gets back. Well, Jason Tatum isn't here to save you now, and they're still gonna bully you in the schoolyard. You can't wait until your big brother shows up. You need to put up enough of a team that can sustain a enough of a record above 500 record that can make a playoff seeding. You're not hoping to be in the play-in tournament, but looking at this roster now, if you have to make the play-in tournament, so be it. You are still looking for any route to success you possibly can. So what I'm thinking, I don't know if I can change up the topic. What are some players that we should start to entertain? And if you were in the Celtics GM seat, what would you be looking to look to add to the Celtics roster moving forward with the pieces that we have now?
Well, first of all, I want to give some news out on the Phoenix Suns before we start talking about some more free agents here, just to get this news out of the way. So, per Chris Haynes, sources, Phoenix Suns and franchise player Devin Booker are in talks on a contract extension. Booker is eligible for a 2-year, $150 million extension. Wow.
Ooh.
150 million for 2 years. That is a massive deal. Wow,
For
that is $75 million. That is the
Devin
largest.
Booker, who didn't
I
even get
that
you to
that
the
that
playoffs.
seems. I think that's the largest number that I've ever seen when it comes to a per year deal. Obviously, the number gets larger every single year. However, the other prong of the Suns news here, Nigel Hayes Davis, and formerly just Nigel Hayes, but Nigel Hayes, the former March Madness star at Wisconsin, he agrees to a 1-year deal with the Phoenix Suns. And Nigel Hayes, he went overseas and had himself a nice EuroLeague career, a 2025 EuroLeague champion and Finals MVP, as well as the Turkish Cup champion and MVP. So Nigel Hayes, he is very much in that Gershon Yabusele category of, he played at Wisconsin years ago, yeah, a decade ago. He played at Wisconsin, made his way to the NBA, didn't stick in the NBA, goes overseas, has himself an MVP like career overseas, and now he's back in America with the Phoenix Suns on a prove it deal, a 1-year deal, where he very much could have the same path of Gershon Yabusele, who's a free agent this offseason. Gershon Yabusele was with the Celtics back in the late 2010s, cut from the Celtics in 2019, went overseas, eventually found himself in Real Madrid, with Real Madrid, and with the French national team last year with the Olympics. And both of those experiences, Gershon Yabusele, a tremendous success over with Real Madrid and the French national team, makes his way back to the NBA with the Philadelphia 76ers, has himself a nice season last year, and now all of a sudden he's actually worth something on the free agent market, Gershon Yabusele. So Nigel Hayes essentially taking the same path as Gershon Yabusele, playing in the NBA as a young guy, not sticking, going overseas, having himself an illustrious career overseas, and then returning to the NBA on a prove it deal where he could very much be a player that sticks in the NBA for the future, as it seems Gershon Yabusele will this season. So very big news there for Nigel Hayes Davis, and of course, formerly not just Nigel Hayes, as we knew back in during his time predominantly at Wisconsin, where he made his name there. However, we were on the point of who the Celtics could go after in free agency. I want to say I brought up a name. Now let's get into the let's get into the let's get into the whole free agency tracker here, and let's actually mine out
I'm
some
going through
names.
the available right now at center, and it is not looking promising right now for the Celtics. What the route I'm seeing for the Boston Celtics at center is you have to trade Sam Hauser. Contractually, that
That was the
is
first thought that came to mind when you're saying, "Oh, well, there's no, there's
you need
there's no viable option in I shouldn't say viable option, but there's no great option in free agency." That's the first thought. Is Sam Hauser out the door?
because
Niang
if
out the door?
because
Simons? Could you?
realistically, if you are looking for best available right now, it is unfortunately 39-year-old Al Horford. However, you look at the two players above him, Mo Wagner, Miles Turner, there is no chance that they would be heading to Boston on a minimum deal. And then it's it's DeAndre Jordan, Plumlee, Tristan Thompson, Taj Gibson, Thomas Bryant. If we were in 2018, this would be a entertaining list at free agent on the free agency market. But right now, this would do absolutely positively nothing to add on to what the Celtics already have as an abysmal group at the center.
Well,
So moving on from another trade is almost inevitable.
That's a pretty bold statement because I will say there are pieces to trade here for the Celtics. Okay, it's not as if you look at the back end of the roster for the Celtics. Let's go through that real quick. So the back end of the Celtics roster here on their payroll, which if you look at the payroll, hey, folks, if you look at the payroll now, I'm gonna say this: none of the payrolls are gonna be accurate because there are deals flying all over the place here, but looking at the Celtics next season, right? So Tatum, Brown, they're safe, you'd think. Derek White, $28.1 million. Brown and White would be the blockbuster. Oh my goodness. I cannot believe the Celtics just moved these players or one of these players type of deal. So we're gonna keep them in that cut. I mean, Tatum definitely not moved. Brown and White are in the you could if you wanted to if you're the Celtics. There could be a
Yeah,
massive deal out there, but likely not if you're the Celtics.
it would have
But
had to
after
happen before
that,
the draft.
yeah, that it feels like probably would have needed, and we could get into that conversation. The number 9 pick was Colin Murray Boyle, and I think he's going to be a pretty good player in the long run. But context of the moment, I will say on that one. But the rest of the roster, you have Anthony Simons, $27 million essentially. He is still a piece the Celtics could reroute elsewhere and mine more assets out of him. And I understand he does play a definitive role, and I'd rather keep him. I would say the Celtics organization, they would likely want to keep Simons and see what he looks like this season. Age 26 season. He's going to be 27 when Tatum comes back into the mix. He's still a player potentially on the rise within the league. And I would say Anthony Simons at 26 years old, you get him for Drew Holidays. He's on an expiring. You might have to pay him more in the future, but that number could be a little lesser than what he's making now. Could be more. Just saying. But it definitely a player with an expiring deal. 27. But he's about 27.7, $27.8 million, around that number, 27 million. He's a player the Celtics could look to reroute in the future. Georges Niang, an expiring around $8 million deal. Another player the Celtics could certainly look to reroute after acquiring him for Kristaps Porzingis, and then you get into the bulk of the Celtics roster. So you have the newly acquired players in my mind. You have Georges Niang, who let's get the official numbers on these deals. Georges Niang, he is at $8.2 million next season, and then Anthony Simons, let's see. He is at 27.7 million. So 8.2 and 27.7 million for Niang and Anthony Simons there. Those players could definitely be rerouted elsewhere. But then you're looking at Sam Hauser, $10 million, Peyton Pritchard, $7.2 million. Peyton Pritchard, I would find it very hard for the Celtics to move Pritchard. His value on court just far surpasses the actual contractual value of himself. Even if you were to get a better player at, say, a 15 to $18 million tag for Pritchard, how much more valuable would he actually be making double the salary of Pritchard, right? So
Right.
Pritchard kind of a hard sell to trade anywhere just with his salary and the long term aspect of his salary too. He's making $8.3 million in 27-28, 7.8 million in 26-27 next season, and then 7.2 this season in 25-26. I'm now we're on to the 25-26 season. I just called it this season 25-26. So wow, we're officially transitioning to next season. But outside of Pritchard, you have Shireman, 2.6 million. You have Xavier Tillman, 2.5 million. Kada, 2.3 million. You have JD Davison, 2.3 million, and then Jordan Walsh, 2.2 million if you're the Celtics. And
You're
all
calling
these
every
players,
team
and
with
that
Hauser and
believe I
Walsh.
added it up to nearly $55 million in salary the Celtics could legitimately look at trading this offseason elsewhere for other players and deals. Now, what kind of player value would that $55 million have, and the nuance of the players in those deals and how you would aggregate all those salaries? That would be another conversation. But you do have essentially $55 million if you're the Celtics to trade, if you're not considering Brown, White, and Tatum primarily, and you're looking at everybody else. And I understand Pritchard and Simons, you might want to hold on to them because the age and especially the
The
Pritchard
only double
contract, but
digit
everybody else is on the
contract,
table.
yeah. The only double digit contract I would consider trading is Sam Hauser and Xavier Tillman. If the trade block is real, it is those two players are being marketed, whatever. If you can give up a center, the team that I has always circled back around to when Sam Hauser has been brought up is the Magic. They're willing to part ways with Wendell Carter, if they're willing to part ways with Goga Batase to bring back Mo Wagner, those are your two routes of doing so, is being able to trade Hauser to that team. Another team that's been brought up in trade conversations is the Utah Jazz. Obviously, them making moves, bringing in Yusef Nurkic, possibly raises the concern of what they're planning on doing with Walker Kessler. Walker Kessler is a young player that I would be extremely interested in the Celtics making a move for, but Sam Hauser, looking at the way this roster is constructed right now, sticks out like a sore thumb on it because when you are a one-trick pony on a team that is looking for players who are going to be able to play multiple positions, be able to take on multiple roles, do things that they're uncomfortable with doing because the star player is out and needing to produce more than they are usually asked of. Sam Hauser is a player that we've seen in the past is questionable on his consistency of being able to deliver that. So and also Xavier Tillman. I know he's a minimal contract player, but his tenure in Boston has not worked out. I think he's a player that surprisingly still can be traded. I don't think he's untradeable. I think that the value that he still has is the grass is greener on the other side for Tillman. If he goes to a team that is more applying to his skill set, allowing him to play a little bit more inside, allowing him to play a little bit slower basketball, not sticking Tillman in the corner. You might be able to see the production that we saw out of him in the 2023-2024 season, and also what they saw out of him in Memphis, which made him a valuable trade asset for the Celtics to acquire in the beginning. So those are the two players that if you're Brad Stevens, you are marketing heavy to try to bring in a center, and that is the main concern in that trade because those are the two assets. But it has now reached a point of desperation for the Boston Celtics at the center position.
Yeah, and where do I want to start here? First of all, bad news for the center market of the Celtics. Mason Plumlee signing with the Charlotte Hornets on a 1-year, $3.6 million deal per Shams Charania. So Mason Plumlee, no longer a center option for the Celtics out there on the
Wasn't
market.
didn't
And the
look at him
Hornets,
as an answer.
the Hornets need a center too. I mean, they basically gutted their center room. Mark Williams, goodbye. They had Nick Richards last year, goodbye. Yusuf Nurkic, goodbye.
Doesn't Mason Plumlee have like a history in Charlotte? Like, wasn't he a very tenured player there?
So he's bounced around. That's what I was just thinking is, was he on Charlotte?
I feel
When
like
was the
I've
last
seen
time
him
he
in
was
a
on
Hornets
Charlotte?
jersey,
Because I feel as if he was on
or what?
Charlotte
Or was
as
it his
recently as,
brother?
okay, so it was 22, 23. So he played with the Hornets from 2021 to so he signed with the Hornets in the offseason. Well, actually, let's get his transaction history up here because that might be important. So Mason Plumlee in 2020, in August of 2021. So yeah, didn't sign. He was traded by the Detroit Pistons with JT Thor to the Charlotte Hornets for Kiprovica. Wow, Balsa Kiprovica. People,
Sure,
I'm gonna go ahead and
sure.
say that didn't work out too well for the Pistons, but was traded by the Hornets in February of 2023 to the Los Angeles Clippers. So was with the Hornets from August 6th, 2021 to February 9th of 2023.
In Charlotte
So
Hornets history,
he's been with the
that is
Hornets
a
before.
pretty tenured player. if you probably go down
He's been in
there,
the league. He's been in the league since 2013. He's been with the Nets, the Blazers, the Nuggets, the Pistons, the Hornets, the Clippers, the Suns, and now the Hornets again. So
so
Mason Plumlee, that is 12 years in the NBA. Mason Plumlee, and he'll be in his 13th year next year. 35 years old. Definitely a veteran bench piece, a mature player to put there in the Hornets locker room. And well, I don't know if I want to go in on the Hornets right now or not because that's a whole different story
right.
in its own regard. But let's talk about the Celtics real quick. Not real quick, but let's go in on the Celtics because that's what originally we were talking about here. And more news: Taurean Prince has agreed to a 2-year, $7.1 million deal to return to the Milwaukee Bucks. So Taurean Prince back
That,
to
that would have
Milwaukee.
been a player I would have liked.
Yeah, $7.1 million
No,
returns to the Bucks. Well, 7.1 million for 2 years, so that would have been basically three million per, 3.5 million per for
minimum.
Tari and Prince. But let's go through the centers right now on the free agent market. Christian Coloco, Christian Coloco, not an option. Nafali Dante, not an option. Bismack Biombo, maybe a little bit. I mean, off the bench, right? Bismack. I mean, he might. He's a
He's not bad.
veteran.
He might.
He's 32.
He'd be battling with Kata.
He
So
would be
all
a
the
Mason Plumlee type of signing. I just saying, not exciting whatsoever. Just a minutes. He'd be a minutes eater, right? That's what you would call him. A minutes eater would be Bismack Biyombo at that center spot off the bench. Jericho Sims, I believe he re-signed with the. Maybe he didn't. I'm not. Don't quote me on that one. But Jericho Sims, young guy, not an option in my mind. PJ Hall, not an option at all. Luca Garza, got him. Hey, picked him up off the center market. The Celtics did. Brandon Carlson, Brandon Carlson, former Raptor, a champion with the Thunder, but also not an option. Jesse Edwards, not an option. Steven Adams re-inked a deal with the Rockets. Quentin Post re-inked a deal with the Golden State Warriors. Micah Potter, not an option. DeAndre Jordan, very
not
old.
an
You could
option.
bring him in. Again, he would be another minutes eater off the bench. Just an
Uh,
experienced player, mature player in the locker room. Not, I'm just
I'm thinking of
no.
What I'm thinking of is opening night when Eddie Palladino has the list of the Boston Celtics starting five, and he is the flames are going up, the lights are going off. Lucky standing in the middle on that platform, waving his flag like this. You think DeAndre Jordan is going to be the name that's read as that lineup is running out on the court and everyone's
Maybe game
screaming.
82. Maybe game 82. Maybe
No, I'm
maybe in
talking.
that scenario.
Yeah, I'm talking.
Game
I'm talking
one.
about
Oh,
game
yeah, I
one
don't know about
at
that.
TD Garden where you got all the lights and you're doing basically your presentation. This is the 2025-2026 Boston Celtics. And you're like, all right, yeah, I can get around to these guys. But like looking at this list, the only one that can potentially entertain a starting spot would be Jackson Hayes, the second best
No, but
name
just
on the
imagine that
market.
the Lakers, they had zero. The Lakers rostered zero starting caliber centers last year at the end of the season, right into the playoffs, and they were facing a team with, I mean, quite a formidable big man rotation. You had Rudy Gobert, you had Naz Reid. I mean, Julius Randle, you consider him a bigger player as well. Went into that series, the Lakers, with no big man and Jackson Hayes as their only option, and they elected to never play Jackson Hayes or even play him 8 minutes after starting him. So Jackson Hayes to me is not even
You,
a legitimate
you could
viable option. He's another minutes eater. There are a couple of players on this list, and most of them I'm just going, they're minutes eaters. DeAndre Jordan, I mean Mason Plumlee
right.
with the Hornets.
You
You're
could
looking at
entertain Marvin Bagley.
Bismack Biyombo
You could
and
entertain Chris Boucher. You could
Jackson Hayes.
entertain You can entertain Larry Nance. These are players
But
that
that's
are
not
listed
even a
as
center,
power
right? Like
forwards.
Larry
Yeah,
Nance is
these are
not even a center.
no, these are players that aren't listed as power forwards, so they would be playing out of position. But yeah, your
We have
only answer right now is to make a trade for a big man, and what I'm expecting is, and which is very realistic, and the idea of a team trading for Sam Hauser, trading a big man, which a team that has big man like that, you look at um, the Suns or a team of that sort. There's a team out there desperately looking for shooting, and Sam Hauser can meet that need. And there's also teams out there that have a surplus of big men that would make a move for a player like Sam Hauser to replace the big man minutes with another capable wing.
well, what about some of these centers? We got the next one, DeAndre Ayton, just bought out by the
Right.
Portland
I,
Trailblazers.
I would
My main
entertain
thing,
that
my two things
1000%.
with DeAndre Ayton, two things. Number one, how much money is he actually going to demand? Was just bought out of a $35 million contract. So how much money is he actually going to
If
demand
he's
on the
like, I
market?
can live off of $35 million, and I want to just prove myself to the NBA that I am still a star capable player. There's a wasp crawling towards me. That makes
Well,
me
that see,
very
like I
uncomfortable.
think DeAndre Ayton with the buyout, he likely gave back the amount of money in which he expects to make on the free agent market, and it's rumored that he
There goes
gave
my
back an
wasp.
amount. He it I don't what's going on. I don't know what's going on here, but
Wasp.
oh, we got an attack. I dealt with this earlier in the season. I gotta say, but I want to keep going. All right, some violence going on behind the scenes here. But so I want to mention more free agent centers. Two things with DeAndre Ayton. Number one, I don't know how much money he's actually going to. What is happening right now? What is this? Is this WWE? What? He brings out the chair. He brings out the chair from underneath the ring. All this going on in the TD Garden, as you guys
I'm
can
gonna
see,
get this
folks.
thing. It's just crawling around.
This is the I'm like Pat Summerall right now. I'm gonna let the crowd go. I have no words to say. No words to say. None. But we do have not a special guest, but hey, he's special enough to be a guest
He's
here.
pretty special.
What's
He's
up with the
special to
chair?
us.
What's going on with the chair?
That chair, do you see that chair? Hey, when that chair came out, I'm going, what? What is this?
Look,
This
I'm
is a
trying to
completely unfair advantage. With the
listen.
chair?
I'm trying to eat my barbecue over here, and all I see because I'm watching this is Franco with a chair and just like attacking the air. That wasp, is it dead? Is it dead yet?
Oh, he's muted. He's muted. Broke the mic.
I got him with the hammer.
Bro, you got him with a hammer. You gave him
Wow.
the 1, 2, 3. You gave him the 1, 2, 3 jab. You know.
Wow.
Wait,
I thought that was
literally a
I
hammer.
thought that was a fly swatter. It's a hammer. It's a legitimate hammer. Wow.
All of a sudden, I see Franco like just jump behind the chair, and then all of a sudden, I see a chair come out. I'm like, what? What is this? I'm not watching the live. I'm watching like what is it? Monday Night Raw. Monday Night Raw. That's what it's called.
It is Monday night. It is Monday night. So it was psych, folks.
Our
Monday Night Raw
professional,
is not
our
happening on
professional.
Fox or
Yeah,
USA.
it's happening on Celtics
It's
Talk
here.
Weekly.
Yep, it's on the CTW network here.
I was very fascinated by that, and I was like, geez. Well, I guess I gotta come tune in to, I know I've been like tonight. It's been crazy. I've been in and out, in and out. Have you guys at least liked the appearances? Like, it's like, all right, we don't have.
Well, the cop light was very insightful. I gotta say that was very. Feel like I learned something with that. I do.
That's fair.
But I do enjoy these appearances because you can talk NBA centers with us right now, Griffin, because we're going
Oh,
through all these centers. I was on DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton, maturity level, how much money is he actually going to demand? The fact Phoenix wants nothing to do with him, Portland wants nothing to do with DeAndre Ayton. There are a lot of red flags around DeAndre Ayton actually being a viable, from a pure player maturity personality standpoint. I mean, forget the money. The
no,
money's
but
a huge question with them, but everything else, that's certainly something big
to-
as well. We have DeAndre
totally.
Ayton. Andre Drummond picks up his player option with the Philadelphia 76ers. Huck Porty, he's returning to the New York Knicks. And I mean, he's a young guy, so he's not even an option, but Brooke Lopez didn't even see Huck Porty in the Knicks Celtics series. But Brooke Lopez, he is now on his way to the Los Angeles Clippers. Brooke Lopez, good addition for the LA Clippers there. But then let's just run down the rest of the list. You have Alex Lynn with the Lakers last year,
Right.
didn't want to play him at all. Another minutes eater, not a real impact player. Day'Ron Sharp, he's returning to the Nets on a 2-year, $12 million deal. Clint Capella, we reported earlier, returning to the Houston Rockets and returning there from back. He was back with the Houston Rockets all the way back in 2020, pre-COVID, the trade deadline before COVID, February of 2020. That's when Clint Capella was traded away from the Rockets, but now returns in 2025, much later on in time, a much different version of the Rockets as well nowadays. However, Bull, not really an option,
Washington,
not really a center. Miles Turner,
Celtics legend.
way too expensive. Way too expensive. Luke Kornet already lost him to the Spurs.
Right.
Al Horford, again, 39 years old. Can you have him back? That would be the best case scenario for the Celtics at this point in time if you just brought back Al Horford plus another big guy. Kai Jones, not an option in my mind at all. Jackson Hayes, not really an option at all. I mean, another minutes eater with Jackson Hayes. Nas Reed already returning to the Timberwolves, 125 million for 5 years. Thomas Bryant. I think Thomas Bryant is a legitimate name we can look at
Oh,
within Celtics Nation and say the Celtics could ink Thomas Bryant to a deal because Thomas Bryant may only demand a minimum deal. And if the Celtics are really looking out on the market and who could give them some real serviceable minutes, even as a starter, that could be Thomas Bryant. I mean, I know he wasn't the most impactful player of the world with the Indiana Pacers last season, but he has in the league, Thomas Bryant has been a player who's made impacts with different teams, is a 2023 NBA champion with the Denver Nuggets, was on the roster that season with the Denver Nuggets, and he's a
so
player who's proved himself in the NBA, and even a player the Celtics have seemingly held some level of interest in the past. If he's
totally.
only demanding a
But
minimum deal, it's
yeah.
possible the Celtics try to go out there and ink somebody like Thomas Bryant. I would say that's on the free agent market right now. That's the top big I would consider the Celtics actually
Yikes.
pursuing because everybody else, even after him, Tony Bradley heading back to the Pacers, Charles Bassey, he's really not an option. Young guy. Tristan Thompson, another minutes eater out there, already with the Celtics years ago. Not going to be a huge
Yeah.
impact player, just a
I
minutes
have a
It's
eater.
the
Tristan
trade
But
Thompson
market.
Thomas
jersey.
Bryant could be both a minutes eater, but also somewhat impactful player. I wouldn't want him to be a starter all season long, but if push comes to shove, if Thomas Bryant has to start, I would feel more comfortable with that than Nehemias Cato or Xavier Tillman or Luka Garza or even Amari Williams, right? And Amari Williams
Totally.
is probably going to be a two-way guy, but Thomas Bryant, pay attention to Thomas Bryant on the free agent
I
market
think I
for the
think we
Boston
go
Celtics.
I think we go more addressing the wings and the guards at the on the free agency market. I don't think they make too many additions to the guard area per se. However, adding another rotational piece would not be a bad idea for them. But I'm looking at this list of power forwards because I'm looking for players that are going to be a little bit more versatile and be able to play multiple positions for the Celtics because that's what they're going to be looking for next year. And they're also going to be looking for a viable option to play next to Jaylen Brown at the wing position. And I don't think that player is Sam Hauser, nor do I see the Celtics relying on Baylor Shireman, who is more of a guard, to step up. He'll obviously step up in the rotation, probably gain more consistent minutes on a nightly basis as he enters his second year. But you look at Jordan Walsh, I don't see him being a consistent player, possibly getting a promotion in the minutes category. But other than that, I think that the getting a player that can match up next to Tatum is going to be huge. So looking at the names of Marvin Bagley, is and Chris Boucher or Larry Nance, Trey Lyles, Precious Achua, Isaiah Jackson's another name, but these are all players that are most likely going to be fielding offers that are above a minimum contract that the Celtics are going to need. But um, you look at players like I said earlier on in the show, it's going to be a lot of players that you would think are damaged goods in the eyes of someone else, but I have faith within the Celtics training and the development to bring in a damaged good player, even like we've seen all season and probably since the beginning of time, the Celtics tied to a name of Ben Simmons, which we'll just address the name because of the rumor. Me personally, I don't think that's the best option for the Celtics to go.
No.
However, looking at what he can potentially become, we've kind of seen what he's potentially capable of, and if the Celtics can reincarnate any of that, then I can see it making sense for them. But um, the I would continue to monitor teams making waiver cuts and name that I would be interested in, and knowing that they're making changes to their roster. The Trailblazers, if they make a move for Jeremy Grant or are waiving a player like Jeremy Grant, that's a player that
I would love Jeremy Grant on the Celtics. Like that would be a one where I am all for Jeremy Grant on the Celtics. I've been a big Jeremy Grant guy, and that's when I would like. Sorry, Franco, I didn't mean to cut you off. I like that.
But yeah, those are the types of players you're going to be looking at. If players hit the waiver wire and they're not generating interest immediately and are still looking to join a team, the Celtics are going to be bringing in a lot of those second tier, third tier free agents that were still sitting on the board and aren't the most appealing, but
Well,
you know what they could potentially become, and when you match them up next to a player like Jaylen Brown, that is the best case of being able to maximize their potential.
Well, I have to say too, like with Thomas Bryant, for example, and I agree with your take, Seamus, is that I would trust him as a starting center for the Celtics this year. Would I want him the main option? No.
No. It would be
No.
just a
It would be a filler till we could get someone better for that position. And I look at Thomas Bryant. He's a guy that I would love to have Thomas Bryant on a bench,
right.
but as a starter,
Right. Where the Pacers had him slotted in, that was a nice role for him.
exactly.
That's about your third
role.
third string big guy, right? That's where I would want Thomas Bryant. But
But
right now, where the Celtics big man rotation is, he would be, if Thomas Bryant were brought into the building, he'd be slotted in as a starter. What I'm guessing here is if you brought Thomas Bryant into the building, there might be another move for a center out there elsewhere, maybe via a trade, and then you have X player and then Thomas Bryant, and then I would assume Tillman. Why would we stick with Tillman? I don't understand why we're sticking with Tillman.
I want Garza to replace Tillman.
That's what I'm saying. It would be X player. It would be X player, Thomas Bryant, Garza, and Kada, and then you could say Amari Williams as your two-way guy, and then Tillman's shipped out elsewhere, whether you're shedding his salary or flipping his salary within a deal for that X player who's going to start at the 5. I think the most viable route for a legitimate starting big is through a trade at this moment in time.
Well, I have to
Jordan
say,
Clarkson is a New York Knick.
Wow. Well, Before we get into that, though, can I finish up my thing on the big men for the Celtics, though, really quick?
Yeah, that was just a quick side note.
We don't need to get into Jordan Clarkson, New York
Yeah.
Knicks. I mean, that's
Well,
bought out by the Jazz. Him and clearly Jordan Clarkson and DeAndre Ayton, zero trade value. The Blazers, the Jazz tried to trade both of them, weren't able to do so, and bought out both guys. Jordan Clarkson earlier today, DeAndre Ayton yesterday, and now DeAndre Ayton, destination unknown, but Jordan Clarkson, now a New York Knick, certainly bolsters the Knicks' depth a little bit and gives them an extra score it felt like they needed last season during the playoffs in 2025.
well, I have to say this. I would love, obviously, the golden prize, and what we talked on here with on Celtics Nation Rise podcast with Boston B Money, the golden prize that you would dream of is bringing in Miles Turner. Obviously, that won't be the case. So I think, obviously it's like, would he go for that minimum? I don't think so. But
Who?
I really wouldn't
Who?
mind bringing
Who?
DeAndre Ayton. I wouldn't mind,
DeAndre Ayton.
but
He would be shocking the NBA. He would be
totally. But I
But
look
what
at
if other teams don't? But that's the thing. Who else wants DeAndre Ayton? It's the Lakers. It's the
You're right,
Hornets. I believe the
but
Bucks were interested
like I
in him. As
said,
the
I
Bucks
don't-
lose
I
Brook
don't think
Lopez,
these
the
guys-
Hornets don't have a center. The Lakers don't have a center.
But DeAndre Ayton, as we get a cat visit, DeAndre Ayton though is a guy I would like on the Celtics though. But yeah, you're right. It's tough to get him. But you look at the whole market. You look at the whole market for centers, and it's so thin right now. And the last time I saw it this thin, especially for the Celtics, like we look at the center depth, was honestly that Tristan Thompson era because with him in Boston. Because you looked at it, Robert Williams was battling with injuries, and Tristan Thompson, when I went to a game,
that roster looked better because at least they had two.
had better pieces added onto it. But I look at this again, and I'm gonna say this again. I feel like we'll get up to that point, and I don't think we should start being so frustrated with the Celtics because, again, Brad Stevens is 2-3 steps ahead of us. Now, for granted, if we go into the season and we have this roster, I'm going to be very disappointed. I will be. I will be very disappointed if we go into the season and have this roster. If we can construct a little more and build around it more and add some pieces, I think this has potential to be one of those bridge seasons and maybe a playoff push, and then you're set for building up when Jason Tatum comes back. But it's the fact that if we go into this season with this roster and like George, I was about to say Georges, but Daniel corrected us on that the other day.
No, I'm so glad he did because I've been wrong. I'm sorry, he's played 10 years in the NBA, 9 years in the NBA. I've been wrong the whole time.
Well, I know because I was saying George Niang, and then you kept saying Georges, and I'm like, oh, yeah, it is Georges. And then I'm like, oh, it's back to George. But as of right now, I think George Niang is our starting power forward. And what world are we in that George Niang is our I'm not for that. Now, if when Tatum comes back and we build a good team up, if he was an option off the bench, like a ninth option off the bench, I would be fine with that. I don't mind. I think George Niang is a great bench piece. If we had built it up. However, where he is right now, I'm not for that. And you look, that's why the Celtics need to build up more. You need the Celtics to have, as we get a cat visit once again, but you need the Celtics to build a roster, again, as Franco said earlier, where you can compete and where you're paying this crazy ticket price because no one's going to go watch. I'm sorry. Welcome George Niang, but no one's going to go watch George Niang. No one's going to pay that top price to see George Niang start. I'm sorry. It's the truth.
When you put up the pillars outside of TD Garden, who are going to be on those pillars?
It's going to be George Niang. I tell you what. If we don't get anyone, it's going to be Anthony Simons, Brown, Derek White, Pritchard, George Niang,
and Hauser. You'd have to think do they
will
still throw up Tatum in all the ads and whatnot next season? That's what I'm a little confused about. Tatum's gone, but I feel like you need his space for advertising with this current cast of characters you're talking about.
Tatum will be on one of those pillars next year, 100%. But I'm going to be so disappointed if I walk into TD Garden and see George Niang on one of those posters. I'm not going to do it. My goal for the Celtics is to build up a team so you don't have George Niang on those pillars. You need to build up a team to at least, because I tell you what, if George Niang is on one of those posters, a lot of fans are not going to be coming to those games for top dollar price. Yes, they will. You'll still have your normal fan base, but it's not going to be sellouts for that top dollar price when George Niang is your starting power forward. It's just the truth. It's the cold, honest truth. But can we build up? Can we do moves and get a better center? Can we build up so where
You
when
need
Tatum
another
comes back,
starting center. You need another starting wing. You need
you do?
and you need a few more. I would say one or two more depth pieces to add upon that.
But I look at this and yes, and I look at this too for the Celtics. I fast forward to is like, look, when we again, I'm gonna say Tristan Thompson era. You guys are gonna hear me say that a lot. But that Tristan Thompson era, when he was our starting center for a little bit, when Robert Williams was out, we had a solid team around there. I feel like we're gonna get back to that point, and that's where I wouldn't be mad about. What?
What if we bring back Torrey Craig? We haven't mentioned him in 3.5 hours.
I wouldn't
Should
mind.
we? Is it the time to mention could Torrey Craig be back
Now,
with the Celtics? I
now
thought
this
the whole time, there's no way, but
quick question though.
maybe
Would you guys prefer, who would you guys rather start? Torrey Craig or George Niang?
George Niang
Niang. I would
by a
yes.
mile.
Niang to
Don't
me is definitely a
underestimate
little
him.
more
Like he's
valuable than
so
Torrey Craig.
underestimated too
Totally.
by the
No, Niang is
Celtics
not.
crowd because of the fact that we have grown to hate him. You look at
I
Brad
agree. I agree.
Marchand in the NHL. He is a player that you hate to play against, but you love to have on your team.
Oh,
He is
totally. But I
Grant.
would.
No, fans are gonna
When
love
I
him.
see
Absolutely. I'm
Oh
when I
yeah,
sorry.
see
They're
George
fans
gonna
are gonna
love
Niang,
him
love him.
day one if he's still around, which we
he's
don't
like a
know.
Grant Williams.
Yes,
What he's a
that's a
perfect.
perfect player comparison. A Grant Williams. However, would you guys how satisfied would you guys be if Grant Williams was a starter for the Celtics as of right now? I wouldn't be satisfied. Grant Williams is a bench piece. George Niang is a bench piece, and you need to construct a team where George Niang is not your starting power forward. That's just that's just it. That's just it.
Well, can I bring this up, Griffin? I know we're talking a lot about the rotation here, and the big
Yes.
talking point is the big man rotation, but the discussion of Luka Garza replacing Luke Kornet. Look at this chart. Look at this Darko chart. All right. Career DPM progression. The red line is Luka Garza. The blue line is Luke Kornet. And I gotta say, the progression so far pretty similar between the two players, given their career number of games. So Luka Garza, you see there at this point in time, Luka Garza and Luke Kornet, they're around the same place, right? But Luke Kornet skyrocketed in DPM progression as his career went on, and most of that coming with the Boston Celtics. Is the same chart potentially possible for Luka Garza? That's what I wonder within all this as Griffin here transitions out of the program. But this goes into Griffin's point is can Luka Garza replace Luke Kornet and Kornet's production over time? And this chart, I will say it's a pretty it's not the end all be all for the Celtics and Luka Garza, but at the end of the day, you definitely have to look at this and go, well, the Celtics made that spike happen within Luke Kornet's career. Why couldn't they make the same spike happen within Luka Garza's career? Now that essentially Luke Kornet, Luka Garza, they were at the same spot, given the career number of games, right? They were essentially at the same spot, and I'll point this out. They were both at a negative, right, negative value at that point in their careers. Where Luka Garza is now, basically the same place where Luke Kornet was. So there's definitely potential for Luka Garza to grow into a much more valuable player into the future. And maybe that is the progression for the Celtics, and Luka Garza is making him into the next Luke Kornet, right? I talked about earlier Luke Kornet. And man, StreamYard is just on one tonight, I gotta say. But anyway, Luka Garza and Luke Kornet. Luke Kornet came into the Celtics building like a Luka Garza type player. We thought, hasn't done much in his NBA career, still a fairly young guy. Was even the Celtics traded for him? We thought he was going to be waived. The Celtics kept him in the building and then let him go during the offseason before he bounced around with Cleveland, Milwaukee, their G League teams, and came back with the Celtics in 22 or in 21-22, made his way into the rotation in 22-23, and then really broke out in 23-24 with the title winning team. And then even last season, really securing that $41 million deal over the next 4 years. Last season, not Luka Garza, Luke Kornet did that last season with the Celtics, secured that deal with his play last year, secured the deal with the San Antonio Spurs now in the offseason. So it's possible Luka Garza could take somewhat of the same path with the Celtics. He could put up some of the same production, and ultimately in a couple of years, we could be talking about Luka Garza as, oh, maybe he is a $10 million a year player. Maybe he's a $9 million a year. Maybe he's a little bit more valuable than what he is right now, which is about a $2.5 million player per year. But with all those guys who make about $2.5 million, the minimum contracts, that's what Luka Garza signed with the Celtics. You want to mine as much value out of them as humanly possible on court, but also set them up for a future where they're outplaying their deal, right? And
Right.
the harsh reality of that is Luke Kornet is to me, the Celtics, they received peak value out of Luke Kornet, max value out of Luke Kornet. But the harsh reality of it is once you're past that point, when they actually get to a point where they're now eligible to be paid a further salary, the rightful due of themselves, right? Because you look at all the contracts the last couple of years. I mean, right now Peyton Pritchard's on that deal with the Celtics, but Luke Kornet was on that deal as well. The deals that just make no sense for the player's production. The production's up here and the deal is all the way down there. That's what teams want, right? They want the Luke Kornets of the world, the Peyton Pritchards of the world, making a combined $9 million last year in salary to be the sixth man and the eighth man on the team, right? That's what players, or that's what teams want to see out of players. They want to get that max value out of a player. But when those players reach the point in getting their rightful due on the market, it's a harsh reality because they walk and they walk for more money, and they're all of a sudden not worth it anymore. And that the contractual value and on-court value, it has to. I'm telling you guys, everybody out there in the NBA world here, the relevancy matters, right?
Right.
Because when I'm
And
talking about, say, Jeremy Grant, right? I used to be a huge Jeremy Grant fan, but that's when he was a $9 million a year player. Now Jeremy Grant is making upwards of nearly $30 million. And I'm going,
that's why I think
he's a role player. That's not
that's why I think he's going
contractually,
to be a waiver
that's not
player.
valuable.
And yeah, I see Jeremy Grant as a waiver player now that I'm kind of keeping my eye on, looking at the Portland Trailblazers. I just don't see him being a player of value in their future. But
Speaking of, first of all, Caitlin Clark approves of Luka Garza, or approves of the Celtics bringing in Luka Garza. So Caitlin Clark posted the Luka Garza news on her story. So the blessing of Caitlin Clark for Luka Garza, two Iowa Hawkeyes. Right now, I got an Iowa Hawkeyes sweatshirt in the closet, and now I get to maybe bring that
get
out
to
a little
rep
bit
it.
more.
Got
Rep the
big shoes
Hawkeyes
to
for
fill.
Luka Garza. Oh
Big
yeah, we
shoes
still
to
have this
fill.
in here. Oh man, we're gonna have
We
to
have to delete them.
we're gonna have to end the stream on that one tonight.
Yep. You're not gonna. Oh, that's not the photo I was looking for. I thought
And
we still
included
had
Luke
the one
Kornet.
of. Yeah, I thought we still had the one of him doing the direction down the
Oh
down the
yes.
court. But Luke Kornet, we'll give these final few minutes of the show as a tribute to Luke Kornet. What a player he was during his time. Brought into Boston as a sharpshooter in an extra trade. He wasn't even the main asset in the trade that brought him over to Boston. He has completely changed his game. He started off in the main program, worked his way up to the Celtics roster, and actually found his way back to the Celtics after getting, I believe he was waived, and then found his way back to Boston, developed into a big man, and became irresistible for the Celtics to play on the court on a nightly basis. Became the clear-cut backup center for the Celtics. Was a part of the Celtics roster when they won the championship, and a player who won the Justin's Flowers presented by Bucket Squad multiple times this year. His efforts will not go unnoticed. And one thing that I've always seen Luke Kornet doing in his return back to Boston is joining Scalabrini on the broadcast table. He, as one of the conversations as inside the NBA has saltered away, is who's going to be replacing them in the future. I think Luke Kornet is a very viable personality to replace on the Celtics and bring in over time. Yes, when he made the case that he deserved the Tommy Award for the season above Derek White, and who knows? Maybe, yep.
There's the first down celebration for Luke Kornet. This is the one that was referenced by you, Franco, earlier.
Yep.
And here's another view of it from the TD Garden Jumbotron and the broadcast of NBC Sports Boston. So Luke Kornet.
Luka
Man,
is
giving up this personality is not going to be easy. Just forget the money, forget the ability, the personality that the Celtics are losing, the Boston community is losing right now. I mean, San Antonio, I got to say, San Antonio, Texas, they've picked up a special personality, a special player in Luke Kornet. I mean, I can't overstate that. I just can't. You look at these photos in here of Luke Kornet, and we've had this one of Luke Kornet. This one's been in here since it happened, since the campaign for the Tommy Award from Luke Kornet on NBC Sports Boston over Derek White, right? He was campaigning, you mentioned it, over Derek White for the Tommy Award. We've had this photo in here ever since. And I don't want to take it down either. It might be here all next season. I mean, when are we playing the Spurs next year? I mean,
we'll
I'm
do
waiting
an
for that game.
episode when the schedule releases.
That'll be early August. I know that's the one thing. My birthday's in early August. That's always something I get treated to NBA wise. Although NBA never, the summer league happened in August once in 2021. That was nice, but outside of that, the NBA, nothing happens in August outside of the coveted schedule release, and we'll find out when we play the Spurs then, halfway through August. But here's Luke Kornet. Any final words though, Franco, on Luke Kornet before we close off here tonight?
Yeah, I think I offered my tribute there. Justin is the one who requested for that to happen, and obviously bringing him back, just the personality would have been nice. However, looking at what the Celtics are looking for, even if you could bring him back, could you rely on Luke Kornet to be your starting center for 82 games? And that's the number one question. Is I can't see Al Horford being able to step into the role. As much as we love him, as much as we like Luke Kornet on this team, I don't see him being able to step into a starting role. I think him in San Antonio is the perfect location for him because they're not going to be asking him to do anything above and beyond what he has already been expected to do. And that is going to be the rotational center for the Spurs. Potentially could start here and there, depending if the Spurs are trying to run a big man lineup, but I think that's a great fit for him. And looking forward, you're just going to be looking for players. It's a very challenging task, but you need to find players that are better than Luke Kornet, and you need to find players that are better than Georges Niang. You need to be able to find upgrades in those two positions before the season begins if you want to be able to make a viable case for a playoff push next year.
And one more piece of news here before we wrap up. Trendon Watford to the Philadelphia 76ers on a 2-year, $5.3 million deal. So Trendon Watford heading down from Brooklyn to Philadelphia. However, that is going to do it here for us on CTW Live. Our free agency specialist, free agency gets underway here in 2025. Now I got to say, on the horizon, we'll have quite a few more lives here on free agency as free agency comes to us. As we know, free agency, not a one-day event, not a one-hour event, but rather a multi-day event, even a multi-week event for multiple teams out there. So we will have you guys covered for all of the NBA free agency news that comes our way, especially when it comes to the Boston Celtics. However, that is going to do it for us here tonight. Of course, I am your host, Seamus Zarlingo. Alongside of me, Nick Franco, and then earlier, Griffin Aldrich joined us here on the program, teaching us all about the police lights, of course. But that's going to do it for us. As I always say, thank you all for watching, and go Celtics.